tension beginning to build. The cars are all lined up on this circuit, this 4.3 kilometre track, 2.6 miles that weaves its way through the parkland just outside the centre of Mexico City. It would be the equivalent of having a race around Hyde Park. It's that kind of atmosphere, it's that kind of proximity to the centre of Mexico City, and this parkland circuit has hosted Formula One races since 1962. Jim Clark won it then in a Lotus. He then won it the next year as well in 1963. We've had a lot of British success here, and Lewis Hamilton will be trying to capitalise on that. But with Nico Rosberg starting on pole position, as we've discussed in the build-up to this race, he has got a lot to prove. He hasn't won since the Austrian Grand Prix all the way back in June. Lewis Hamilton has won 5 of the last 6 races. You have to say, Mark, it's going to be Hamilton, but Rosberg will be absolutely determined.
Yes, and of course what's interesting is despite the fact that Rosberg's been lining up those pole positions in recent races, and here again Lewis outraces him, and particularly this turn 1 battle, we saw a huge struggle between them in Suzuka. We saw, of course, an amazing turn 1 at Austin last weekend. So actually this run down to the first corner here is going to be thrilling.
The cars pull away on their formation lap as they try and get as much tyre temperature as possible, and tyres are going to be crucial today as far as strategy is concerned. The ideal is to do a one-stop strategy. Pit your soft tyres on lap 20, then do another 51 laps on the medium compound tyre. But as we heard from Lewis Hamilton as he was making his way to the grid, he was saying the rears are going to be very, very difficult to keep under control, and that could be absolutely crucial. We could end up with a 2-stop race, and because it's a new circuit, it's brand new tarmac, it's a real challenge for the teams to get their head around. Mark, what is this circuit like? It's very different to when we were here back in 1992, but the sort of essence remains.
Yes, the essence does remain, and particularly looking down the main straight into turn 1, which is a 90-degree right-hander, then followed by another 90-degree right-hander at 2, and then through 3. So that very fast, long pit straight ups, and we have we're watching on the monitors at the moment as we are watching the cars winding their way around the circuit. Once they go out of turn 3, there's another flat-out blast down to turn 4, and that's really the end of sector 1. So sector 1 really can be characterised as being 2 very fast straights with a couple of overtaking positions. Then through turns 4, 5 and 6, really no opportunity to move past your opposition there, because these are 90-degree corners, and indeed turn 6 is really a double apex right-hander, then leading down through turn 7 into a very nice flowing section. I have to say it's been beautiful watching some of the on-board images through turns 8, 9, 10 and 11. The flowing nature of those corners really lines you up for the end of sector 2, and then down into the breaking point at turn 12. And again, that's one more option where you could maybe overtake before you then wind your way through this amazing infield section that they've developed at the former Peraltada corner, now renamed Nigel Mansell turn. And then once they come through that stadium section, they're through what remains of the Peraltada corner, down across the finish line.
The cars are lining up now through that final corner at Nigel Mansell to pull into their grid positions. It'll be Nico Rosberg starting on pole, Jenny Gow.
Yes, he makes his way just in front of me, followed by Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. The entire grandstand, people underneath you, Jack, everybody is on their feet waiting for this race to begin.
So the tension begins to build. Nico Rosberg pulls up in pole position in his silver Mercedes. He's going to be on the left-hand side of the track on the run down towards the 90-degree right-hander at turn 1. We're expecting them to hit almost 200 miles an hour off the start into that right-hander, and it's going to be absolutely crucial. On the second row of the grid, it's Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Kvyat in the Ferrari and the Red Bull, respectively. Then it's Ricciardo and Bottas. Jenson Button is starting at the back of the grid. He didn't take part in qualifying. He has just pulled into position now, and now we wait for the lights. Nico Rosberg on pole position, Hamilton alongside him. All 5 lights are on for the first time in 23 years. We go racing in Mexico, and it's a lot of wheel spin for Nico Rosberg. Hamilton gets a decent getaway on the run down towards turn 1. He tucks back inside behind his Mercedes teammate. It's Rosberg holding the lead, but it's such a long run down towards the first corner. Hamilton has to dart to the outside because Rosberg covers the inside line sensibly. Already up into third place, we've got Daniel Kvyat thanks to a good start, but it's Rosberg who holds the lead. Hamilton is second, Kvyat up into third, Vettel down to fourth, then it's Ricciardo fifth, Felipe Massa and Valtteri Bottas in the two Williams cars going side by side, and it's Bottas who comes out on top. But a perfect start for Nico Rosberg. He was not going to budge from that inside line down towards turn one, Mark Gallagher.
No, and my goodness, he really pulled to the right-hand side of the circuit and held that line absolutely up against really the track perimeter all the way down into turn one.
Here's
as we listen to Vettel.
Okay, check, I might have a puncture. Yeah, puncture positive, Ricciardo, puncture.
Yes, Sebastian Vettel got very close to Daniel Ricciardo down at the first corner, and unfortunately the Ferrari driver has picked up a puncture and he's dropping well down the order, and he will have a lot of work to do in this race. But it's Rosberg who holds the lead. Hamilton is pretty close to him though, and staying with them too is Daniel Kvyat. Then it's Ricciardo behind, then it's Bottas, and then it's a great start from Max Verstappen. He's now managed to split the two Williams drivers as Pastor Maldonado goes past his Lotus teammate into the right-hander of turn 12. They come into the stadium section for the first time to be greeted by a fantastic atmosphere. They then come out through the Nigel Mansell corner, accelerate up to 225 kilometers an hour. This is what Fernando Alonso has to say.
Same problem, so lots of forward. I guess I come in.
Okay, Fernando, retire the car, come into the pits slowly.
What a disastrous weekend for Fernando Alonso, Jenson Button and the McLaren team. Alonso already out of the race. At the end of lap one, Rosberg leads Hamilton by 0.6 of a second. Then it's Kvyat, Ricciardo, Bottas, Verstappen in 6th, Massa, Perez, Hülkenberg and Sainz completing the top 10. Vettel comes into the pits after his puncture, followed in by Fernando Alonso. 11th is Maldonado ahead of Grosjean, then Ericsson, Nasser, Rossi, Raikkonen, Button, Stevens, the 18 runners, and then Sebastian Vettel as well has just left the pits in 19th place.
And as you say, a catastrophic weekend for McLaren Honda. Honda actually won here in 1965 when they had their own team in Formula One. One of only 3 victories that Honda has ever secured as a constructor. But as an engine supplier, of course, a lot more wins, 69 Grand Prix victories for Honda as an engine supplier. But I have to say, in the current era, this weekend is a kind of typical insight into the extreme problems that Honda are having in making a powerful, reliable powertrain for the McLaren team. And Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso will be bitterly disappointed from what they've seen this so far over the course of this Mexican Grand Prix outing.
Let's hear from Daniel Ricciardo, Team Radio.
Yep, steps above that and it gave me no room at all.
Yeah, mate, understood. He has got a puncture.
So that's Daniel Ricciardo blaming Sebastian Vettel for their collision at turn 1, but Ricciardo is still running in 4th position. Rosberg has just set the fastest lap of the race. We're on lap 3 of 71 here in Mexico. It's the Mexican Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. Jack Nicholls, Mark Gallagher and Jenny Gow with you for the next couple of hours, bringing you all the action. DRS is now enabled, so that means we'll start to see some overtaking as the drivers are able to open the gap in their rear wing that gives them more straight line speed down the long start-finish straight.
And importantly, Nico Rosberg is actually 1.3 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, which is very an important margin in relation to DRS activation. I have to say, Danny Kvyat doing a terrific job in 3rd place. I quite fancied his chances this weekend because he was very strong in practice, and Red Bull Racing were frustrated with what happened in qualifying. And you really get the impression, even just listening to the voice of teammate Daniel Ricciardo, a bit of disappointment there because he had a tangle with Sebastian Vettel. It'll be interesting to see what damage has been caused to his Red Bull. But Danny Kvyat now sets the fastest mid-sector time of all, with a 33.62 mid-sector, around about a 10th quicker than the Mercedes cars in front.
Impressive stuff from Daniel Kvyat, the Russian driver who's running in 3rd position for Red Bull at the moment. The sound you can hear is the Williams of Valtteri Bottas. He's got Daniel Ricciardo up in front of him as he comes through the final corner at Mansell and over the start-finish line. He can now open up the DRS, I think, because he's within 1 second of Daniel Ricciardo, and the Williams is very strong in a straight line, so there's going to be a real opportunity for Bottas to get past the Red Bull on the run down towards turn 1. This is the battle for 4th position. Ricciardo, the Australian driver, covers the inside line, but as they weave through turns 2 and 3, they're going to enter the 2nd DRS zone, which will be another opportunity for Valtteri Bottas to get past. He tucks right underneath the rear wing of the Red Bull. Daniel Ricciardo darts one way to try and get a bit of a break, but he manages to hold onto that position for the time being. Ricciardo in 4th, and Felipe Massa's doing a pretty similar job behind because he is trying to get past Max Verstappen's Toro Rosso for 6th position. So both Williams on the attack. They're 24 years unbeaten here, having won last time out with Nigel Mansell.
Okay, brakes are starting to get hot already, Kimmy. If there's anything you can do, I know you're battling, but brakes are getting hot.
So that's Kimi Raikkonen being told the brakes are getting hot already in his Ferrari, and it is pretty warm here. So some of the warmest temperatures we've had all weekend. The thin air as well means that there's not as much cooling on the brakes as the teams and drivers would like. And if you're following a car in front, that means you're not getting the cool air onto your brakes. You're getting the hot air that's coming off the engine of the car in front of you.
Exactly, but also Raikkonen had some brake issues yesterday, and you were commenting there about the performance of Bottas in the Williams, streaking up behind the Red Bull of Danny Ricciardo. I have to say the Williams team were quite disappointed to be out-qualified by Red Bull Racing here, given the Williams' excellent straight line speed, partly as a result of that Mercedes-Benz powertrain, partly as a result of the aerodynamic configuration here in Mexico. But Bottas particularly said that actually he was very confident he could overhaul the Red Bulls simply because of that straight line speed advantage.
Lewis Hamilton set the fastest lap of the race last time around to bring him 9/10 of a second away from Nico Rosberg, so before too long he may be able to open up the DRS and have a chance at trying to attack his Mercedes teammate, who currently leads this Grand Prix. Lap 5 of 71 here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Daniel Kvyat is running third behind the two Mercedes in his Red Bull. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo is in fourth place, with Valtteri Bottas in fifth position. At the start it was a poor getaway from Sebastian Vettel. That's why he wasn't really in the mix with the Mercedes on the run down towards the first corner.
Well, that's right, and I think actually neither of the Mercedes made a particularly strong start. Rosberg had quite a little bit of wheel spin, but actually maintained his position. Lewis looked surprisingly prepared to stick in behind him. He did pull out on the run down into turn one, but actually really it was always Rosberg's corner, and he's really been trying to edge out an advantage here. He's currently setting a stunning pace. Actually, he's just set the fastest lap of the race overall. I suspect that Rosberg got the message of the fact that Hamilton had closed to within a second of him, and so he's just produced that slightly extra performance on this lap.
Yes, he's now 1.3 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, and then it's Kvyat 3.1 seconds further back. Bottas has dropped behind Ricciardo far enough to not actually gain the DRS at the moment. He's just over a second behind the Australian in their battle over fourth position. We're just getting a replay of Daniel Ricciardo versus Sebastian Vettel down into the first corner, and that's what caused the puncture for Sebastian Vettel. Ricciardo looked up the inside, he was there or thereabouts, and well, Vettel did come straight across to try and take the apex. Maybe Vettel should have given Ricciardo a little bit more room.
Yeah, it looked pretty tragic, really, when you look at it from that point of view. If you're on the Sebastian Vettel's side, if you're a bit of a fan of his, I have to say he left no room at all for Danny Ricciardo, and not really surprising that they collided, and certainly not surprising that he had some damage, and I'm surprised he got away with more than just a puncture.
Lap 5 of the Mexican Grand Prix. Down in the pit lane for us as ever is Jenny Gao.
Thank you very much. Sorry, there was a very nice gentleman trying to talk to me while he removed my headphones, so I couldn't actually hear anything at all. Every time the car's going past at the moment in the grandstand, everybody is on their feet. Lots of Mexican waves fluttering around, as you heard. The top two just go past with Daniel Kvyat behind them. The tension down here, the excitement is palpable. Lots of very happy people that Formula One is back here in Mexico.
And Lewis Hamilton has just set the fastest lap of the race again, so he and teammate Nico Rosberg trading fastest lap blows up at the front. Daniel Kvyat's fairly lonely in behind them, and then it's Linus Stern behind. The incident between Ricciardo and Vettel, race control have decided that there's no further action warranted. I think if Vettel had continued and the damage had happened to Ricciardo, it may be a different story, but Vettel sort of got his punishment by picking up that puncture.
Yeah, indeed, and it's a pity for the race as we listen to him.
Where the hell was he supposed to go? So he just put the front wing to my rear tyre. He had no chance to get me anyways. He just gave us the puncture.
So Sebastian Vettel clearly thinking that Daniel Ricciardo was to blame.
Yeah, well, I think he needs to see the replay when he comes back at the end of this race. And it's disappointing actually for the fans that Sebastian Vettel has of course dropped to the back of the field as a result of that puncture, because actually Vettel in the Ferrari was one of the hopes in terms of taking a challenge to Mercedes. But let me just talk about the Mercedes drivers, because actually what we're seeing here is a ding-dong battle between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton once again. There's 1 second between them at the moment. Hamilton again quickest overall in the first sector on this lap, then on the mid-sector actually about 0.3 of a second slower than Nico Rosberg, and in the final sector Nico making the ground up a little bit again. But so it's seesawing depending on lap depending on the sector that they're individually in. And it's quite interesting that typically Hamilton is faster than Rosberg over sector 3, but usually Rosberg has the edge over sector 1 and 2, and certainly that's the way it was in qualifying.
So Ferrari's having a bad start to this race. Kimi Raikkonen had to start in 19th position. He's managed to get his way up to 13th place now, so we'll keep an eye out on his progress. Sebastian Vettel, though, 16 seconds off the back of the pack in 19th position. One retirement so far, Fernando Alonso.
The rear grading isn't getting any worse. At the moment, it's stable.
That's good. Copy that. Good feedback.
So that's Valtteri Bottas in the Williams saying the rear graining isn't getting any worse. That means he's got a reasonable amount of grip still from his rear tyres, and they're hoping they can run them a little bit longer. Jenny has more news on Ferrari, who are suffering a difficult start to the race.
Yeah, obviously, Jack, you were saying about that 35-place grid penalty that Kimi Raikkonen had to take, putting him in between a McLaren sandwich at the back of the grid. Well, when Sebastian Vettel came in, suffering that puncture, the rear right was completely bald. It was just on the hub. And I wonder just how much damage that may well have done to the rear right of the floor, because that's really important for the aerodynamics and the smooth flowing and running of the car. I can tell you, we will have a pit stop any moment now. The Williams of Valtteri Bottas has come into the pits.
Okay, so he's come in on lap 9, just after he'd come on the radio saying the rear graining isn't getting any worse. So maybe they've decided to switch him to a different kind of strategy, because there's no way I would have thought they could do 60 laps on the medium compound tyres. Maybe they're deciding to go a little bit of a different route and move on to a two-stop strategy for Bottas. Interesting decision there from Williams.
Yeah, well, I think it was always the case that if you started to lose the rear tyres, if that graining happened in the early stages of the race, which we have now seen in the case of Bottas, you're going to have to switch on to realistically a two-stop strategy. One stop would be ideal, but two stops was always going to afflict you if you had a problem with the graining on the rear tyres, particularly on the softs. There's about a 1 second difference in performance between the two tyre compounds here, between the mediums and the softs. The softs obviously a little bit quicker, but the softs do degrade quicker, and of course that actually costs about 1.5 tenths of a second a lap in terms of tyre degradation. As we listen to Sergio Perez.
Pace is good. How is the tyre?
Yes, I'm struggling with the rears, mainly the rears. Other than that, all under control, man.
Mexican racer Sergio Perez, driving for the Force India team, is running in 8th place at the moment. Make that 7th because Valtteri Bottas has made his pit stop. So a good, strong showing for Perez at the moment. We're just seeing Valtteri Bottas's pit stop again. Maybe he ran into trouble. Yes, he did. A slow right front wheel going on, and that will have cost him maybe a second or so. It's Mark Gallagher alongside myself, Jack Nicholls, and Jenny Gow, bringing you coverage of the Mexican Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Coming up after we're done in about an hour and 45 minutes, it'll be Raising the Bar with Rob Rinder. But at the moment, Felipe Massa has come into the pits as well in the other Williams, and so has Nico Hülkenberg.
Yeah, so we can really see Williams here in terms of making those soft tyres last for any length of time. It's really failed, and that'll be a disappointment for them to move on to a two-stop strategy. Now, of course, they may well have planned for that based on the tyre degradation that they had seen on the soft compound tyres yesterday. But one other thing to point out is how much the weather has changed this weekend. We had a lot of cloud cover on this track on Friday and Saturday, with actually a few spots of rain. Today it's much hotter. It's blue skies predominantly. The sunshine is really quite hot, and that is going to be having an effect on tyre temperature, and particularly on the softer compound tyres at this stage in the race, when of course you're carrying a heavier fuel load.
So we've already lost one driver from the race, Fernando Alonso. He had to retire on the opening lap. Jenny, any news on what happened to him?
Yes, I can tell you it was a fault with the car. The team already knew that there was a problem. It's actually the MGU-H, or H, I don't want to get in trouble with people listening at home. So they had a fault with that. They already knew before he went to the grid that it was likely he might only be able to do a few laps, but he wanted to be out there for the fans that have come and made their way to Mexico to cheer on someone who's a Spanish speaker especially. So they've retired him. He said he had fun for the first few laps. There we go.
Okay, thank you for that, Jenny. A Spanish speaker especially, very good. As we have Valtteri Bottas, who's just about to make an overtaking manoeuvre on Jenson Button. And Bottas has pitted, Jenson Button hasn't pitted, so he's now up into 12th position, Valtteri Bottas. And will be interesting to see how long Williams can run on this medium compound tyre. feel free to get in touch during the duration of the Grand Prix using the hashtag BBC F1. Some of you doing so already. Rachel T saying, I would not like Lewis in my mirrors all race long. Nico will be under a lot of pressure, and I think that'll be something that Rosberg will really have to deal with.
Indeed, and he's managing the gap over Hamilton at the moment, 1.4 seconds, and Nico's still knocking in those fastest sector times. He's just gone quickest again in sector 2. So Nico's managing this race pretty well at the moment. I get the impression in terms of Lewis's performance that of course he's right there too, and he's watching that gap. In fact, he's just done a terrific final sector time. He took 0.4 of a second out of Nico across the final sector and reduced that gap down to 1 second. Of course, the all-important 1 second mark in regards to DRS activation. And Lewis Hamilton's watching the back of Nico Rosberg's car and going to track him every inch of the way, because the British world champion absolutely wants his 11th Grand Prix victory of the season.
We're on lap 11 of 71 here at the Mexican Grand Prix. Nico Rosberg is leading the way, but Lewis Hamilton, as you say, Mark, is closing in on him. 1 second difference between them. Then it's Daniel Kvyat 6 seconds further back down the road for the Red Bull team, and he in turn is 6 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. So I wonder if Ricciardo's contact on the opening lap has given him some real damage there. Max Verstappen is currently running in 5th place. Sergio Perez, the Mexican driver, is 6th. Carlos Sainz 7th. Raikkonen 8th. Bottas 9th and Felipe Nasr the top 10. Here's Perez's radio.
Laps, Checo. How many more laps can you keep going?
How many you need?
How many can you do? Can you do 5? Can you do 5?
Yes, at this pace, yes.
Fascinating stuff there. Perez's conversation between him and the engineer. It's like trying to choose who wants to watch what on the telly, isn't it? How many laps can you do? How many do you want to do? Yeah, but how many can you do?
I mean, this is an absolutely critical moment, because actually Nico Hülkenberg, his teammate, he came into the pits a couple of laps ago and has switched on to the medium compound tyres. The fact that Sergio Perez has once again proved to have the advantage over Hülkenberg in terms of being able to make the tyres last longer means that he's still on those soft tyres, and he's now saying he could do another 5 laps, which should take him up to around about lap 16, 17 before he had come in. And whether that means he thinks he could actually go for a one-stopper, of course, remains to be seen. But it's certainly showing that local hero Sergio Perez has got the edge in terms of tyre management over his teammate Nico Hülkenberg.
Mark, it's fascinating because Sergio Perez now has 5 podiums to his name, and when it comes to managing those tyres, as you say, he is an absolute master of it in that Force India car. For some reason, he just seems to go to places that other people can't, and when he's got on the podium, a lot of the time it's because of that. Remember last time in Russia, he kept those tyres going almost impossibly and then managed to get on the podium because of the crash in front of him between the 2 dueling fins. So he really does know how to get a lot out of the tyres.
Let's hear from Daniel Ricciardo's team radio.
Some people look like they're 2-stopping, but we're going to stick to our plan.
Which I presume is a one-stop strategy. So that's Red Bull's thinking that Williams have decided to 2-stop their cars, and as a result Red Bull would probably be battling Williams over the sort of 4th, 5th position. So that's why they've got to keep an eye out on what's going on there. Nico Rosberg again sets the fastest lap of the race, 1.5 seconds now clear of Lewis Hamilton. Daniel Ricciardo is running in 4th place behind his teammate Daniel Kvyat in 3rd. So it's Mercedes, Red Bull at the moment, and Max Verstappen is up into 5th position. Sergio Perez in 6th, still just in front of Carlos Sainz, but Carlos Sainz has now opted to come into the pits in the Toro Rosso instead of getting held up behind Sergio Perez. So Jenny makes a very good point about Perez being very good at managing his tyres. He has had a lot of success doing that, and maybe that will work out for him again today. Some of you saying, using the hashtag BBC F1, will teams be doing an early stop in case there's rain on the way? We're not really expecting much rain, especially looking out the window. It's all blue skies and lovely. There's probably some rain coming on later in the afternoon, but we expect that to happen once the race has come to a conclusion. So Rosberg leading by 1.5 seconds on lap 13 of 71 here at the Mexican Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. And we've had Sainz in the pits, and the question is going to be now, when will the Mercedes decide to come into the pit lane?
Well, the battle at the moment rages at the front. Rosberg has edged out his lead over Hamilton to 1.5 seconds, and actually Rosberg bangs in another fastest lap at 1 minute 23.6. Actually, just a little word about Max Verstappen. You know, he qualified 8th. terrific performance for him in qualifying yesterday, and now he's up into 5th position. And of course in Austin we witnessed him running up into a top 3 position during the race. He finished 4th, and really this Dutch driver is such a terrific story around Formula One this year for him. He's now turned into the ripe old age of 18, which means that I think he could actually drink the champagne in some countries if he actually gets on the podium at some point. But actually Verstappen, just such a terrific talent, and in a year where so much focus has been on Lewis Hamilton, the Mercedes team, and his battle against Nico Rosberg, there are a couple of other great stories, and Verstappen is right there in the middle of them.
Absolutely a superb performance from the Dutch driver, just 18 years old, driving for the Toro Rosso squad. The top 10 at the moment then: Rosberg, Hamilton, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Perez, Raikkonen, Bottas, Massa and Hulkenberg. But some...
That's a solid lap. Keep it up, Danny. Did a great job at the moment.
Daniel Kvyat there in the Red Bull, being told he's doing a great job, and he certainly is. He's in 3rd position, but that top 10 is a little bit out of sequence because some drivers have made pit stops. Jenson Button is up into 11th place, having started from the back of the grid, and Sebastian Vettel is 13th, having picked up a puncture early on. Kimi Raikkonen as well, having started at the back, is up into 7th spot. So those are the drivers lower down the order. Lewis Hamilton again has just set the fastest lap of the race, and in fact we've just had an overtake as Sebastian Vettel goes past Carlos Sainz for 12th place now. So Vettel up into 12th, but he's 50 seconds off the lead of the race, which is where he should already be. Were it not for the puncture that he picked up on the first corner after contact with Daniel Ricciardo. It was side by side between the two Mercedes on the run down towards turn 1. Rosberg managed to hold the lead from pole position, but Hamilton and he are now sharing fastest lap after fastest lap, and the key could be the pit stop window, which we think for Mercedes will come in maybe 4 or 5 laps.
Interesting. While we were talking about Sergio Perez's terrific tyre management, the engineer of Danny Kvyat congratulating him on the performance that he's producing from those soft compound tyres after what is now 15 laps. And Kvyat and Ricciardo and the Red Bulls in 3rd and 4th position. They're tracking the Mercedes-Benz duo in front around about half a second to a second off the pace, although Danny Kvyat's just banged in a good lap time, 1 minute 23.4, which is actually faster than Lewis Hamilton and not that much different from Nico Rosberg. So Kvyat maintaining good pace, good performance, but he is 9 seconds adrift of the Mercedes duo. As we listen to Raikkonen.
Okay, Kimi, we can reduce the brake saving slightly. If I could have 2 or 3 tenths of lap time, that would help us on Kvyat. Kvyat is currently P3. If he stops, he'll be very close to us.
Okay, so that's Kimi Raikkonen being told to speed up just a little bit because when Daniel Kvyat pits, they want to be in front of him, and Kimi Raikkonen has started on the medium compound tyre, which is the harder of the 2 compounds, so he should be able to run for longer into the Grand Prix, and Ferrari want to get him out in front of Daniel Kvyat. At the moment, the 2 Williams drivers are running in 8th and 9th position. They, it seems, have switched their strategy to a 2-stopper, which could be very interesting come the end of the race. Any news, Jenny?
Well, I just wanted to bring up the Williams pit stop. Once again, they had problems when they brought Valtteri Bottas in with one of the tyres going on, and they've practiced and practiced these pit stops and just can't seem to get them right this year, even though they've brought in so many different changes and steps to try and make sure that they're really improving that side of things. I have to say, it must be very hard for Williams at the moment, knowing that when it comes to battling with Red Bull, which is what they're trying to do, Red Bull beat them on the pit stops almost every single time.
Yeah, it's something that has hampered Williams throughout the season, and a few questions coming in using the hashtag BBCF1. Rob Perriam asks whether a one-stop strategy is risky today, and I think for some of the teams it's a bit of an unknown because they haven't run 50 laps on the medium compound tyre, which is what they'll have to do if they do decide to do a one-stop strategy. So it is risky, I suppose, but if that's the way that the teams calculate is the fastest way to run it, they have to take that risk.
Well, it's really only risky if you are compromised in terms of tyre degradation.
Oh, and a spin for Sebastian Vettel coming through the S's. Vettel had just got past Jenson Button and up into 11th position, but the Ferrari has spun off coming through the turns 8 and 9 complex. He rejoins the circuit. Hopefully we'll get a look back and see exactly how he managed to do that, but we have seen that the cars are all a little bit loose coming through the quick sequence of corners through the left, right and then left again, and Sebastian Vettel has fallen foul to that and dropped back behind the 2 Lotuses now, so all his hard work is done and he lost it all by himself.
Yeah, he really carried way too much speed into the left-hander, and I mean, he was apexing properly. He didn't appear to have gone off track. Really just too much speed. The back just switched round on him, and he did very well to collect it. And actually not unexpected that we're seeing this, because one thing that was very clear on Friday was a low grip nature of this track, and although it has rubbered in over the weekend to some extent, the reality is that this surface is quite new, it's quite unraced on, and when you carry too much speed you can easily have an off, as several other drivers have seen already this weekend.
Vettel had just set the fastest first sector of anyone, so he was clearly having a bit of a push, and
well, that kind of tells a story, doesn't it? So he's decided to absolutely go for it again on this lap, and carried too much speed, and paid a pretty heavy penalty for that, and finds himself now dropping back down the order again into 15th position behind Pastor Maldonado's Lotus.
Meanwhile, Jenson Button has just lost out to Carlos Sainz for 11th position, and Vettel has just made another mistake coming into turn 12 into the Mexican baseball stadium, home of the Mexico City Red Devils, and he's run wide on the exit of turn 12 and managed to get away with it without hitting anything. We're on lap 19 of 71 here in the Mexican Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. We've already had a fantastic day of sport, and it's continuing here. After us, we'll be going to Rob Rinder and his show Raising the Bar, but at the moment we've got a Mexican Grand Prix to be settled. Sergio Perez in the Force India has just pitted, so he and Nico Hülkenberg look to be on separate pit stop strategies, maybe one doing a one-stop race, another doing a two-stop race, and Perez comes out just in front of Carlos Sainz, and Sainz manages to take the position away, and Sainz has already made his pit stop, so Perez has lost a position there in that battle with Carlos Sainz, but the Toro Rosso driver pitted a couple of laps earlier compared to Sergio Perez, so that may come back towards the Mexican later on in the race. Rosberg leads, he's just at the fastest lap of the race and now has a 2.8 second advantage over Lewis Hamilton up at the front. Daniel Kvyat and Daniel Ricciardo in the Red Bulls running in 3rd and 4th positions, Max Verstappen in the Toro Rosso in 5th, and Sergio Perez, well, it's Kimi Raikkonen now up to 6th position in the Ferrari, and he's going to be going a long way into this race because he's on the medium compound tyres.
Now, over the last 4 laps, Lewis Hamilton has just edged further away from Nico Rosberg. The gap has opened up to 2.8 seconds, and one has to wonder whether Lewis Hamilton's car on those soft tyres is actually suffering a little bit more degradation than his teammate. As we listen to Vettel.
It's pretty bad. I can't continue, but it's not great.
Okay, that's Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari saying the flat spot's really bad, but I can continue, and that's where he's spun the car, locked up the tyres, and now instead of being a perfect circle, there's a chunk that's straight, and that's giving him bumps every time he drives down the straight. He says he can continue, but it's not ideal.
Just going back to the point I was making, Nico Rosberg maintaining a very good pace, and actually Lewis Hamilton has just done a very good mid-sector, quickest overall, 32.7 in that mid-sector, but Hamilton's overall lap times have been deteriorating, and that 2.8 second gap that's opened up will concern him a little bit. Overall, however, on this lap he's just set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 23.008, but the gap continues to remain at 2.6 seconds. So Nico Rosberg still in control of this race, and Lewis Hamilton's lap time is maybe a little bit up and down as he's perhaps trying to keep those tyres going for as long as his teammates, so that they are matched on strategy.
We'll be talking a lot about tyre wear over the course of the weekend, and we've been asked by Prix whether the new tarmac on this track will cause lower tyre degradation like we saw in Russia last year, and I think that is something the teams have been getting used to, and the fact that they're considering doing 50 laps on the medium compound tyre is an attribute to that, and shows that there is not that much grip on the circuit, and therefore it's not wearing the tyres as much as a high grip track would.
Yeah, there's no question that the delta in performance between the softs and the medium here is really quite pronounced, and I think these warmer conditions today are really accentuating that.
Jenny, what are your thoughts on the tyres?
Well, I've just been doing a little bit of maths. Sergio Perez came in at lap 19 to change over his tyres, whereas Nico Hülkenberg, his teammate at Force India, came in at lap 10. Now, when Perez came in, he actually gave way to Sainz to do what they call the undercut. So Sainz managed to gain a place, and Sainz had done 12 laps before stopping and switching tyres. So it just shows, I mean, we heard Perez saying he thought he could do 5 more laps, where he managed to get 19 laps out of those. So he's definitely looking to only come out once. And talking about pit stops, and out comes the Red Bull pit team as Daniel Kvyat comes in to change his boots. Still no movement from the Mercedes team.
So Daniel Kvyat, the first of our top 4 to pit, and it looks like a pretty sweet pit stop for the Red Bull team, and he heads out on the medium compound tyres, laying a big 11Zs of black rubber down as he pulls away, and will be interesting to see how that battle between he and Daniel Ricciardo comes when Ricciardo makes his pit stop. And we heard about Kimi Raikkonen wanting to get out in front of Daniel Kvyat once the pit stop's made, but it's Kvyat who is in front of Raikkonen, and it's Raikkonen who's under pressure from Valtteri Bottas. The two Finns that collided a couple of weeks ago in Russia are now squabbling over 6th position. Raikkonen in the Ferrari has it at the moment, but Valtteri Bottas is on fresher tyres because he's already made a pit stop. Raikkonen started this race from the back of the grid on the medium compound, and the sound you can hear is the Mercedes engine in behind the Williams as he tries to go around the outside of Kimi Raikkonen down at turn 6. He's going to get squeezed off. He's got the inside line and they make contact again. The two Finns come together. Kimi Raikkonen's out of the race. His right rear suspension is broken. He will have to pull off the track. And once again, Bottas and Raikkonen come together. Raikkonen out of the race. Bottas has 6th place.
And that was extraordinary. You could almost see it happening, you know, in slow motion. You could see that Kimi really didn't need to come across onto the racing line because Valtteri was already there, as we hear Kimi.
I think the rear right's damaged, is it, Kimi? Yep, rear right is broken, I believe, Kimi.
Well, that's the Ferrari engineers telling him the rear right's broken. Raikkonen has climbed out of his Ferrari and is wandering back now, and he'll get a lift back to the paddock, and that's his race over.
I think that's a kind of an extraordinary collision because Kimi could see that Bottas was there, and Bottas had made his move down the outside into the left-hander very clear. They were really side by side, and Valtteri was always going to try and hold that line. We're currently watching a replay on the monitors as Bottas pulled out of the slipstream, of course maintained his performance around the outside of that corner. He was really not fully alongside, but 2/3 of the way alongside the Ferrari, but Kimi still came across, and of course the wheels then interlocked, and it was just a question of one wheel over the other and the right rear wheel and axle of the Ferrari shearing as they impact on the Williams. And I'm sure Bottas will be frustrated by that. It'll be very interesting to hear what Kimi's comments are, and as you said, Jack, they have some history.
Absolutely, and it was Raikkonen who hit Bottas in Russia, but now it's Bottas who hits Raikkonen. But on both occasions, you could probably argue that Kimi Raikkonen was to blame. And now Sebastian Vettel is battling once again with Jenson Button. He spun, dropped behind Jenson Button, and now he's managed to pass him again. Button is up into 13th position in this race. Rosberg continues to lead Hamilton up at the front. The two Mercedes drivers in 1st and 2nd places. We're on lap 24 of 71. Here's Bottas's thoughts.
All okay with the car? Feels like.
Copy that. Pressures look good. He just cut you up, gave you no space.
Copy that. There was no space inside.
Yep, you had the line. Copy that.
So a lot of copy that, but I think Bottas saying I was not to blame there.
Yeah, and the incident involving the two Finns is of course under investigation by the stewards, and we're quite surprised if Kimi doesn't get a call up to have a chat with Mark Blundell, who's the guest steward this weekend, along with the other 3 race stewards. And we're currently now on a very interesting phase of this race, because the Mercedes cars are still tracking one another at the front, still obviously maintaining the degradation management on their soft tyres, and really it's going to be very interesting to see when those pit stops happen how Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton can manage their positions, because Lewis Hamilton, I'm quite sure, will be going for the undercut if he gets the opportunity.
Absolutely, the gap is down to 1.7 seconds. It's fluctuating up and down between the two Mercedes drivers. Behind them it's Ricciardo, then it's Verstappen in the Toro Rosso, but he's yet to make his pit stop. Daniel Kvyat is 5th and 7 seconds back from Verstappen, and has just set the fastest middle sector of anyone on his new tyres. Then it's Bottas, Massa, Hülkenberg, Sainz, and Perez the top 10, and Daniel Ricciardo, now the second Red Bull driver, has come into the pits a couple of laps later than his teammate Daniel Kvyat. So maybe Ricciardo was able to keep those tyres in a usable range just a little bit longer. We're getting some really different strategies, and we're seeing the teams split their cars as well. Daniel Kvyat has come out well in front, and the two Williams cars are now in front of Daniel Ricciardo. So they pitted on laps 9 and 10 respectively, and Bottas and Massa are now in front of Ricciardo, but we think they'll have another pit stop to make. Here's Nico Rosberg's radio.
So Nico's not going to be long, so start pushing hard now, just small amounts of brake manoeuvre.
So that's Nico Rosberg being told it's not going to be long till the pit stop, so you need to start pushing to try and get that advantage over Lewis Hamilton, so he can't do anything when the pit stop window comes. And on those two Mercedes drivers, we're on lap 26 now of 71 here in Mexico. It's Jack Nicholls, Mark Gallagher and Jenny Gow with you. On those two Mercedes drivers, a lot of the questions we're getting on hashtag BBC F1 is whether Hamilton will just sit behind Rosberg. He's been told to do that by the team to help Rosberg get second place in the championship. Here's Rosberg's radio meantime.
Box, push hard now. Brakes are in reasonable condition.
Okay, so that's Rosberg being told you're going to come into the pits on this lap, push hard, the brakes are okay, you can really go for it. But just quickly to back to that point about the Mercedes drivers, do you think those team orders will have happened?
No, there's no team orders here. Nico and Niki Lauda and Toto are absolutely hard over in the fact that the two guys can both go for it, and this is really going to be critical now. Nico Rosberg has been given the notice that he has to make his pit stop. He's done a personal best on this first sector on this lap, so obviously he's got the message, and the fact that he's been also told that the brakes are in pretty good shape means that he can push a little bit harder. Mid-sector time, not very good at all really, but actually you can expect that because these tyres are worn as we listen to Vettel.
Okay, copy, cool the brakes if you're not passing.
So that's Sebastian Vettel being told to cool the brakes because he's running into trouble there. Meanwhile, Nico Rosberg is into the pits.
Yeah, he just comes into the pit, slams on the brakes. The team lifted him up in the air, put on a set of the white Pirelli tyres. He wheel spins out, and he is gone. That looked like a pretty sound pit stop to me. No gambles, no big risks. Rosberg back out.
Thank you for that, Jenny. Yes, it certainly looks as though that was a good pit stop for Nico Rosberg. This is the time, though, that Lewis Hamilton will have to really push a 2.5 second pit stop for the Mercedes team. Very, very quick indeed. And he emerges onto the circuit and will try and get up as quickly as possible, up to speed. The incident involving Kimi Raikkonen and Valtteri Bottas has been investigated, and there's no further action warranted. And you wonder whether, again, they're saying it's Raikkonen's fault, but he knocked himself out of the race anyway.
Well, they've obviously decided it was a racing incident. No one's going to be reprimanded over that, and actually I think that's probably a good call.
So we've got Hamilton leading the way. His teammate Rosberg has pitted, though, and Hamilton will have to pit in a couple of moments' time. Meanwhile, the other Brits, Will Stevens is in 17th place for the Manor team. Let's hear Rosberg's radio.
Prime tyres to the end.
So that's prime tyres for the end for Nico Rosberg. That's his last pit stop on one and only pit stop on lap 26 of 71. Will Stevens for the Manor team is 13 seconds clear of his teammate Alexander Rossi. So a really good performance from Will Stevens at the moment. He's in 17th place. The Manor car is a lot slower than the rest of the cars, but he is still having to perform well as Sebastian Vettel goes up the inside of Pastor Maldonado going down into turn 1. Gets on the brakes and loses the rear end, and as a result Maldonado is able to squeeze back through. So Vettel and Maldonado doing battle over 11th position.
And really interesting, I did expect to see Lewis Hamilton perhaps following his teammate into the pits on the next lap, but he didn't. He's completed another lap, so Lewis Hamilton obviously deciding, along with his race engineer, to eke out a bit more performance from these tyres, perhaps on the basis that he's then going to have a slightly fresher set of mediums for the balance of the race. Very interesting cat and mouse game to watch.
Box.
And there he goes. He gets the notice, box to Lewis Hamilton, you're going onto the prime tyre, but he did manage to get effectively an extra 2 laps out of the soft compounds.
But Nico Rosberg was a second quicker in the first sector alone on his new tyres, so that's going to be the offset for Hamilton, as he will hope he'll be in better shape with his tyres towards the end of the race. as Hamilton gets on the brakes into the 90-degree right-hander of turn 12, then into the 55,000-seater capacity baseball stadium as he loops through the slowest corner on the track, the tight hairpin left-hander at turn 13, taken at just 66 kilometres an hour. You can hear the chants of Checo. The fans are still loving him as into the pits comes Hamilton, Jen.
Yeah, he's just coming in across the pit line. He jaws in front of me. So those old tyres that look shoddy and worn by now are coming off. On go the new tyres. It's another slick pit stop by the 23 men of Mercedes. And he's back out with you, Jack.
A tenth of a second quicker than his teammates' pit stop, but Rosberg is going to resume the lead of the Mexican Grand Prix as Hamilton exits the pit lane now, and he's going to be a good couple of seconds back from his teammate Nico Rosberg. So it's Rosberg leads, it's Lewis Hamilton in second place, it looks as though it's Daniel Kvyat in third place at the moment, then it's Bottas and Massa in the two Williams cars, but we think they are on a two-stop strategy, and then it's Daniel Ricciardo in sixth, Nico Hülkenberg in seventh place, Verstappen and Sainz in eighth and ninth, Sergio Perez, unfortunately for the fans here, has dropped down to 10th position, then it's Grosjean, Maldonado, Vettel, Button in 14th place, Ericsson, Nasser, Will Stevens, Alexander Rossi. We've had two retirements, Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso, 3 world championships between them, and neither of them still running. But it's Rosberg in the lead ahead of Hamilton. We'll get the gap between them before too long. Now Sebastian Vettel is still stuck behind Pastor Maldonado. Here's his team radio.
Tyres are really not in great shape now.
I'm really not in great shape now, says Sebastian Vettel. Exactly what that's referring to, I'm not sure whether that's the brakes or the tyres or just the the tyres. Okay, so he said the tyres are is what he's struggling with.
Yeah, well, he tried to conduct a down the inside overtaking manoeuvre on Maldonado, ran on, obviously just didn't have the grip, and if there's such a thing as body language in your voice, I don't know if you can have body language in your voice, but Sebastian Vettel doesn't sound very happy today. I think huge disappointment over what happened at the start of this race, and then exacerbated by that spin that we saw. We know he had another off-track moment. We've now seen him have yet another incident, and really for the 4 times world champion, this was not how he was hoping to run his Mexican Grand Prix.
No, absolutely not. It's a frustrating time out there, isn't it, Jen?
Yeah, and I think what's more frustrating, obviously Sebastian Vettel had that coming together with Daniel Ricciardo off the start, so had to come in, pit on the first lap. And we've seen it before. In fact, we saw it in Russia last year when Nico Rosberg had a problem on the first lap, came in, pitted, and then managed to get something like 52 laps out of one set of these medium tyres. And I think Sebastian Vettel would dearly love to have thought, okay, well, I'll come in, I'll do one stop, and I'll just see how these medium tyres work and how much I can get out of them. He's flat spotted them already, we know that. He would want to keep on these tyres until the end of the race, but if he's not feeling happy on this set, maybe it's worth just taking a gamble and saying, you know what, I'll come in and change over, but it would cost, and it would be a heavy price to pay if he did that.
Well, Vettel will need to stop again, not necessarily by the letter of the regulations. He could go to the end on these tyres, but he pitted at the end of lap 1 thanks to that puncture, so he's not going to be able to do 70 laps on the medium compound tyre.
Just information on the tyres, they were worn down to 10%, so managing the tyres, you've got a good position.
That's Nico Rosberg being told he's in a good position with managing the tyres, which will be happy. He'll be happy about that, won't he?
Yeah, it's really extraordinary, isn't it, that the engineers can these days report back to a driver and say that he correctly managed the degradation down to 10%. So in kind of road car speak, he had enough tread left on the tyres to pass the MOT at the end of that pit stop. So that was that's a good result for him. Lewis Hamilton obviously putting the hammer down, setting the fastest lap of this race. The gap is 3.1 seconds, and Lewis will perhaps be reflecting on the fact that his strategy edged him further away from Nico Rosberg across those pit stops, but obviously a long way to go in this Grand Prix. Lap 31 out of 71, 40 laps to go, and tyre management is going to play a key role over the course of those 40 laps, and Lewis Hamilton will be, of course, looking for any opportunity to close in on his teammate.
Into the pits comes Jenson Button, having started at the back of the grid. He is coming in for his first pit stop as he is on the medium tyres, and I wonder what pit stop, what tyres he will change over to next as he pulls into the McLaren garage and the teams get ready to swap the tyres around. And meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton has just set the fastest middle sector of anyone so far and has brought the gap down to 2.3 seconds as he sets the fastest lap of the race. So Hamilton's starting to close in on Rosberg. He's got a little bit more tyre life to use in these medium tyres because he came onto them a little bit later. So that battle is going to be absolutely fascinating. We've probably got just under an hour or so to go of this Mexican Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. We will be with you all the way to 9 o'clock though, bringing you all the post-race coverage as well. But it's Hamilton versus Rosberg, as it has been for the championship, as it has been for the last 2 seasons. It is once again for the Mexican Grand Prix. There's only 2.3 seconds between them, and Hamilton is lapping quicker than his Mercedes teammate at the moment. And Hamilton will still have a point to prove. Okay, he's won the championship, but if you're a Formula 1 driver, you want to win everything possible.
Well, certainly Lewis Hamilton does, and very interesting to see him take a second out of Nico Rosberg once Lewis had those fresh tyres on. Just a word about Jenson Button having a fairly quiet race there, but he came in and switched onto the soft tyres as perhaps we would have expected. Can't really see him running those to the end of the Grand Prix. 40 laps is way beyond the soft tyre distance, so a two-stopper very likely for Jenson Button, and a very quiet race for him, and a disappointing weekend for McLaren Honda.
Mark Gallagher, former head of Cosworth Engines, is alongside me in the commentary box as we hear from Valtteri Bottas.
Race update, still P4. Looks like all cars around have stopped and will go to the end. Kvyat in front is lifting and coasting.
So that's Valtteri Bottas in 4th place. But when they're saying Kvyat in front is lifting and coasting, that means that he is coming off the throttle early and isn't driving to the sort of maximum capability of the car. So that's saying to Bottas, you've got a chance to try and close in on Kvyat. He said all the cars around them are going to the end, but didn't explicitly say whether Williams would be. We presume they'll have to stop again though, because they came into the pits on lap 9 and 10 respectively for Bottas and Massa. So it'll be interesting to see where Williams come out in all of this. If they were to pit now, for example, they'd come out down in sort of 8th, 9th, 10th positions. So that wouldn't be the ideal strategy, I don't think, having started in 6th and 7th places on the grid.
You're exactly right. The pit stops that the Williams teams made were a little bit early, probably 5 to 6 laps earlier than they would have liked. We reckon 55 laps is possible on the medium compound tyres. Maybe they're going to ask their drivers to try and extend that, but wow, to get 60 laps out of a medium set of tyres is really rather a lot.
And Carlos Sainz has just made a mistake and lost out to Sergio Perez. Well, he made a mistake and went off the runoff area and just cut straight across and didn't lose any position. So he's now slowing down to get back into the grips of Sergio Perez, but he won't give that position back. So that'll be an interesting one for the stewards to judge. Made the mistake in the Toro Rosso, coming down towards the left-hander of turn number 4. And Perez, at the moment, has to remain in 10th position.
Well, I have to say, from my reading of that, that was basically a shortcut. And as we hear Sergio Perez.
When Carlos got the track.
Understood, we saw it. We saw him cut the track.
And Sergio Perez has just made the move up the inside of Carlos Sainz. Great manoeuvre in the stadium, in the baseball stadium, in front of 55,000 fans. And Perez is up into 9th position now in the Force India. The Mexican driver making progress, but it looks as though Sainz will be right up behind him as they come down the long start-finish straight. Sainz opens his DRS and will try and challenge Perez coming down into turn 1. Looks to the inside, decides against it. Maybe he'll try and use the DRS in the second zone that runs from turns 3 down to turns 4. We'll wait and see, but certainly you can hear the crowd cheering as their man Sergio Perez gains another place.
Well, while we were listening to the radio communication between Sergio Perez and his engineer, Carlos Sainz obviously had been given a message from his team, because he really pulled to the right-hand side of the track coming through the stadium section and made it very clear to the local star that he could move past him, because really that was such an obvious shortcut that he'd taken as a result of his off-track excursion. And you know, great to hear the crowds roaring and cheering as their local hero is now up into 9th position, and of course hopefully managing those tyres so well that he'll be able to elevate himself further up as this race progresses.
Just seeing the replay there, I wonder if Carlos Sainz let Perez through, whether he was instructed by the Toro Rosso team to let him through, because he certainly gave him plenty of room to manoeuvre. And that was the cheer from the Mexican fans in the grandstand as Perez made the move stick. Fantastic stuff. And Perez, Jenny, up into 9th place now.
Yeah, the atmosphere is incredible in that stadium section. It's a baseball field most of the time where the Red Devils play here in Mexico City. But at the moment, the servers who usually serve nachos and beer to the crowd for baseball are doing exactly that for the crowd here for Formula One. They're balancing trays on their head, and one man was very lucky not to lose a very heavy burden load of beer on his tray. Well, everybody jumped up there. What a nice place to do that in front of all of those Mexicans cheering Sergio Perez and his Force India car on.
Rears will be the limit.
That was Daniel Ricciardo's team radio saying that the rears will be the limit in terms of the tyre wear in the remaining laps. Just seen Naomi Harris here as well, who's Miss Moneypenny in the new James Bond Spectre film. The opening 15 minutes of that movie are set here in Mexico City over the Day of the Dead weekend, which is this weekend, and the opening 15 minutes to that movie are absolutely spectacular, and the premiere here is tomorrow, so that's why she's here. I think Sam Smith's here as well. But Mark, we sort of got caught up a little bit in the Day of the Dead celebrations last night, and it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. Everyone dresses up, a lot of colour, obviously celebrating deceased relatives, but doing so in a very, very much celebrating life, and a great party atmosphere in the centre of Mexico City last night as we were walking back from our restaurant. And actually the fact that the Grand Prix is taking place on this weekend also kind of all adding to a great atmosphere here in the capital city of this wonderful country.
Into the pits has come Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari then, and he's going to change over to another set of tyres. It's going to be another set of the medium compound tyres. We're on lap 36 of 71, so we've just gone past half race distance here at the Mexican Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. Myself, Jack Nicholls, Mark Gallagher, former head of Cosworth Engines, is alongside me. We've got 5 Live Formula 1 pit lane reporter Jenny Gow in the pits as well, and we have got probably about 45 minutes of this race to go, which Nico Rosberg is leading, 2.9 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, the 2 Mercedes drivers out front. Then it's Daniel Kvyat in 3rd place for Red Bull. Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa for the Williams team are 4th and 5th, but they, we think, have to make another pit stop. Daniel Ricciardo is now in 6th place, Hulkenberg 7th, Verstappen, Perez, Carlos Sainz completing the top 10. Grosjean and Maldonado are 11th and 12th. Sebastian Vettel is 13th after picking up a puncture on the opening lap thanks to contact with Daniel Ricciardo. Felipe Nasr is 15th. Jenson Button started at the back of the grid and has only progressed up to 16th position. Will Stevens is 13.5 seconds clear of his teammate Alexander Rossi.
And Vettel ahead, he is a lapped car.
And that's Lewis Hamilton being told that Vettel ahead is a lapped car, which I think will satisfy Lewis Hamilton, because it knows that he's not going to get too much pressure from Sebastian Vettel today.
No, well, that's really just a clarification point from his engineer to make sure Lewis doesn't think for 1 second that Ferrari is in any way involved in the battle for this race. And really what a disappointing afternoon for Ferrari fans. The fact that Sebastian Vettel is now a lap down, currently tracking along between the 1st place Mercedes of Nico Rosberg and the 2nd place Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. And the Ferrari team, of course, have many successes here over the year. And actually, from a British point of view, John Surtees won the Formula 1 World Championship here at this circuit in 1964, becoming the first man ever to win both the motorcycle and the Formula 1 World Championships here at this track. So there's a lot of heritage and success associated with Ferrari here in Mexico, but not today. It's been a pretty gloomy afternoon for them.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's been a good venue for British drivers in general. Jim Clark won the first 2 Grand Prix here, driving a Lotus, but it's 11th and 12th at the moment for the Lotus team. That was back in 1962 though, so a little bit of development has gone on since then. So Rosberg leading Hamilton by 2.9 seconds. Hamilton's initial charge has started to wane just a little bit. Daniel Kvyat running in 3rd place, a fairly lonely 3rd place, because although Valtteri Bottas in the Williams in 4th is just chipping away at his advantage, it's only by maybe a 1/10 of a second or so per lap, and it's Nico Rosberg at the moment who is commanding this race out at the front, and this is exactly what he needed to do to sort of try and win back the psychological war that we talked so much about at the top of the show.
Now, Nigel Mansell also was saying to Jenny Gow that, you know, this race is all about not making mistakes, and and certainly for Nico Rosberg, considering that a mistake is what handed Lewis Hamilton the United States Grand Prix last weekend. Nico will be absolutely focusing on making sure every single lap is driven perfectly, because that's really what he needs to do to maintain his advantage over Lewis Hamilton, which is now increased again to 3 seconds. And really at this stage of the race, lap 39 out of 71, you'd have to say not only is Mercedes-Benz completely in control here, but Nico Rosberg looking very comfortable at the current time, and it'll be just interesting now to see how and if anything evolves over the balance of the laps of this race. It's going to upset the rhythm that both of them have gotten into. Really a very long way back then to Danny Kvyat, as you said, in third place. Really for Mercedes-Benz, it's been hasta la vista. They've just taken off into the lead of this race, and no one can touch them.
We're on lap 39 of 71 in the Mexican Grand Prix. Already been a very busy day of sport here on BBC Radio 5 Live. 10-man Southampton beat Bournemouth 2-0 to go 7th in the Premier League. We had England beat New Zealand 26-12 at the KC Stadium in the Rugby League Internationals, and plenty more to come out during the week as well. Tomorrow evening it's Tottenham versus Aston Villa in the Premier League, and then it's Champions League on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Man United versus CSKA Moscow and Bayern Munich versus Arsenal on Wednesday are the two main commentaries, but we'll have updates from Sevilla against Manchester City and Chelsea versus Dynamo Kiev as well. Here's some team radio from Sebastian Vettel.
Okay, there's debris, entrance of turn 10. I don't know what it is, but looks quite solid.
Maybe debris turn 10.
So that's Sebastian Vettel saying there's debris at the entry to turn 10. Do you think there's any chance he's trying to get a safety car deployed to try and pull him back into the race a little bit?
No, I would say that's actually genuinely a case of him providing some intel back to the team, and obviously Charlie Whiting, the race director, will be wanting to know about that. If a driver is reporting debris on the track that hasn't been reported by one of the marshal's posts, then that's something that they need to have a look at. And when he says it looks pretty solid, what he's really saying is it doesn't look like it's something you want to hit. So it's obviously a decent size of debris, and hopefully at some point we'll get some information as to exactly what that is.
So Jenny, what news from the pit lane?
Well, Vettel's been in communication with the team as well. It happened a little while ago, though. When he was told to come in and pit, he actually was told to come in and pit for mediums, and he wanted to check with the team that they were definitely sure they wanted to stick with the mediums. He was quite keen to stay out on the softer tyres, or stay out and wait to go onto the softer tyres, and the team said, no, we think the mediums are stronger, so box now. So it's interesting to hear the conversations that go on behind a pit stop decision.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly it's a difficult situation for Sebastian Vettel, because he's kind of ended up with nothing to lose after that contact on the opening lap with Daniel Ricciardo. We're on lap 41 of 71, so just 30 laps to go, and Rosberg and Hamilton still only separated by 2.6 seconds, which isn't a huge amount. Hamilton is definitely there or thereabouts in terms of the battle for the race lead, but you just wonder what can he do to try and close in on Rosberg, because they've been so evenly matched all season. Hamilton's had the tiniest of edges.
Well, based on previous experience, you would expect that Lewis Hamilton will, at some point, decide to bang in a few quick laps, see how much performance and energy he can take out of those medium compound tyres, and put a little bit of pressure on Nico Rosberg. And if he can do that, perhaps with, say, 10 or 15 laps of this race remaining, maybe he could force Nico into an error.
Let him by.
Quicker than him.
Let him by now, otherwise we get the penalty. Let him by now and then stay behind him.
That's Sebastian Vettel being told to let Lewis Hamilton by. He's saying I'm quicker than him, but he has had 3 blue flags waved at him, and the blue flag is there to say you've got a car about to lap you, you've got to let him through. And much to Vettel's disappointment, he moved over and let Lewis Hamilton through. So it's 2.8 seconds between Rosberg and Hamilton up at the front.
And just a little point, Danny Kvyat and Daniel Ricciardo for Red Bull Racing in 3rd and 6th positions. And actually, when you look at them in the Drivers' World Championships, actually only 2 points separates the two Red Bull drivers. Ricciardo on 74 points, Kvyat on 76, and actually exactly the same margin separates Massa and Bottas. So Bottas on 111 points in his Williams and Massa on 109 points in his Williams, and that really shows that in both those teams there has been great equality of performances between their two drivers over the course of this season, and really they are currently the best of the rest, certainly in this race, with Hülkenberg next up in 7th position, again ahead of Max Verstappen, then Sergio Perez of course managing those tyres extremely well in 9th position, and then finally Verstappen's teammate Carlos Sainz rounding off the top 10.
If things stay like this and Nico Rosberg wins the Grand Prix, he's got a 2.8 second advantage over his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton, then Rosberg would retake second place in the championship, and with Vettel not scoring, his advantage in that second place would go up to 29 points, which would be very difficult for Sebastian Vettel to claw back. Just how interested are the likes of Vettel and Rosberg in finishing second in the championship? Is there much, benefit in them going, yeah, I finished second?
Well, I think there is benefit, because I think for Sebastian Vettel and the Ferrari team to beat one of the Mercedes drivers in this season would be a great result. Incidentally, as we just see Lewis Hamilton set the fastest lap.
We have massive understeer when we have no air on the car.
Jenson Button, I think, complaining about understeer and oversteer, which is not good at all.
Not good at all, especially when you're in 16th position with only Stevens and Rossi behind you, and really just a struggle for them at the moment. But I was just mentioning that Lewis Hamilton had banged in the fastest lap of the race with a 1:21.994. He's still 2.4 seconds adrift of Nico Rosberg, but as I said, we've got to watch out for this, because I'm quite sure Lewis Hamilton will try and up the pace and take a little bit of a challenge to Nico at some point, just to see whether he can pressure him, and really that's something we have to hope for in what is currently settling into, or has settled into, being quite a processional race just at the moment.
Chippy Barton's got in touch using the hashtag BBCF1, and he says, why must Nico Rosberg win this race? Apart from winning the race, does Lewis Hamilton or anyone else care? It's too little, too late. Do you think it is important for Rosberg to win this race?
Of course, it's important for every driver to win a race. That that's what they're paid for, and more than that's what they're paid for. That's what they want to do. He's a professional racing driver, driving the best car in the world for the World Championship winning team, and Nico Rosberg knows that every time he can rank himself first, each time he can win a Grand Prix, that's just another accolade which can help him in his career, but also which can really remind people of the fact that he's not a spent force. Nico Rosberg's doing a terrific job today. The world champion Lewis Hamilton is tracking him, but has been unable to close in, and actually while we're talking to you, we've just seen one of the marshals rather bravely run out onto the track to recover a piece of debris which had fallen on the track. It was difficult to see exactly what it was. It didn't look very solid. It looked like it's almost some kind of material. I'm wondering if someone had picked up a foreign object and maybe dragged it along on the track, maybe something that had been pulled up when they ran over one of the curbs. But I think for fans to wonder about the wisdom of or the sense of urgency that would be in Nico Rosberg to win this race, absolutely, of course he wants to restamp his authority, reassert his authority within the team with a victory today, and that would certainly be a great step for him.
We've got Carlos Sainz in the pits, making his second pit stop of the race so far. He's down in 11th position and will drop a couple more places. Ian Ferguson, BBC F1's weatherman, has said that we're only likely to get rain after the race now, by the looks of things. I don't think we're going to get any in the sort of next 30-35 minutes of the race. It's just gone 8 p.m. back in the UK. We're here on BBC Radio 5 Live covering the Mexican Grand Prix for the next 55 minutes or so, and then we'll be going to Raising the Bar with Rob Rinder, and after that it'll be Stephen Nolan, as we've got Nico Rosberg leading the race here, 3 seconds clear of his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton. They've now got a 28-second margin over Daniel Kvyat, so they could both come in, make a pit stop, head out again, and it would be absolutely fine. That's the sort of Mercedes domination we're seeing, which we didn't expect to see in the early stages of the weekend, but also we lost Sebastian Vettel on the first lap. Here's Rosberg.
So gap to Lewis is...
Don't tell me anymore. Don't tell me anymore.
Copy.
That was a bit of a sort of stroppy Nico Rosberg there, wasn't it? He was said, the engineer was trying to tell him what the gap to Lewis is. He says, don't tell me anymore. Yeah,
well, I think again that kind of is an insight into his mindset, isn't it, really? He just doesn't want to be distracted. He realises he doesn't want to make any mistakes. He's got Lewis Hamilton literally breathing down his neck, just a few seconds behind, and Nico Rosberg knows that it's in his hands to win this Grand Prix just by pacing himself, looking after the car, getting the best performance he can out of these medium compound tyres over what now we're lap 46, so 25 laps of this race remaining. But yeah, slightly petulant to talk to his engineer like that, and engineer's only trying to help him after all.
Exactly, that's how I talk to my producer, and he doesn't take it very well. We're on lap 46 of 71 here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Rosberg leading 2.9 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. The bassist on Twitter, using the hashtag BBCF1, asks, what's the likelihood of Williams getting a car on the podium? At the moment, they're in 4th and 5th positions, the Williams, but they stopped so early, I feel like they have to stop again. So if they do stop again, they'll be dropping right back down to your sort of 8th or 9th positions. So maybe we'll see how that transpires later on in the race. Jenny has news on Mercedes.
Jack, you know, you were saying about the gap that the Mercedes team have over Daniel Kvyat. Well, it looks like they're just about to bring one of the cars in for a pit stop. I didn't think they needed to, but they are lined up. 23 men with a set of the medium tyres. It's a question of which car's about to come in to take this pit stop. You'd think Rosberg has priority over the call, but he's leading this race. And in comes Nico Rosberg for the lead of this race into a pit stop. And they are putting on the medium tyres. It's a slightly slower pit stop than before, Jack, but interesting.
Your internal body clock is excellent there, Jenny. It was 0.2 of a second slower than last time around. I'm really impressed you can pick up those kind of details. But so, yeah, Rosberg comes into the pits. Will they now pit Lewis Hamilton as well, or will Hamilton want to stay out? Here's his radio.
We are going to convert to plan B. We're converting to plan B. Let us know if you'll need a flap adjust.
So Hamilton being told we're going to convert to plan B, so they are going to make a two-stop strategy. Simply, Mark, because they can. If you're Lewis Hamilton, would you rather actually just stay out and see if you can hold on for the remainder of the race?
Well, it's very interesting that they've now switched on to plan B, which is a second pit stop to stay on medium compound tyres. Lewis Hamilton will be no doubt processing that information, having been given the information over the radio, and thinking about the fact, should he come in as instructed, or should he have a dialogue with his engineer about perhaps keeping on the current set for a few more laps so that he has some extra energy available in the replacement set towards the end of the race. But it's so amazing in terms of the performance of the Mercedes team that they've edged away so far from the competition, half a minute up the road. They've been able to give themselves this extra stop.
The Mercedes pit stop were waiting. The team are already all stood out in the pits. Lewis Hamilton drove past.
Exactly. So he's processed that information and taken the decision that actually he's going to keep going. He feels he's got enough performance in the tyre. And actually, while we were talking about Nico Rosberg coming in to do a great pit stop, you know, Lewis Hamilton banged in a sub 1 minute 22 time.
So Lewis, we're just worried about where. We're worried about where in these tyres. We're down to the canvas, so we're going to box this lap. So this is for safety reasons, Lewis. So box this lap, box this lap.
So Lewis Hamilton saying, why do I have to come in again? And they're saying it's for safety reasons. Now, is that just a way to convince him to come into the pits?
Well, we've had messages already in this race about the percentage of tyre wear that's left on a tyre, and of course the Mercedes team will know exactly the performance that they're getting from these medium compound tyres. This is going to be an interesting moment because I think Lewis isn't happy.
Well, no, you need to check his tyres. My tyres feel good.
So Lewis, we were down to 0 on the first set. We have to go longer on this set. We will be down to 0, if not worse. So this is boxing end of this lap instruction.
So Lewis Hamilton has now come into the pits on this lap. He's weaved in through the right-hander and he's heading straight to Jenny Gow.
Yeah, he did not want to come in, did he? He pulls in, and remember that this is a 24-man team made up of half of Rosberg and half of Hamilton's team. So the men working on the car are a mixture of both. And Lewis Hamilton has gone back out into this race, but questions will be asked of did he have to?
No, it's very interesting. Valtteri Bottas is on his 39th lap on those medium compound tyres, and so it's interesting that Lewis Hamilton decided to stay out there. He would have wanted to stay out there, and you wonder if the championship title was up for grabs, whether he would have done. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Please check those tyres and let me know. I want some feedback on them.
That's Hamilton saying, check those tyres, let me know. He wants proof that they had to come into the pits.
Yeah, he's really questioning that call for this pit stop, and he'll want to know exactly how marginal it really was. And again, that kind of shows his strength of mind and the fact that, of course, he trusts his team implicitly, but the reality is he didn't want to stop, and Jenny pointed out that, and I think it'll be an interesting discussion point after this race, because Lewis may well go public with the fact that he didn't feel that was the right call.
So Hamilton is now into second place. It's Nico Rosberg who leads the Grand Prix. The two Mercedes in first and second. Then it's Daniel Kvyat running in third spot. Valtteri Bottas is fourth with Felipe Massa fifth in the two Williams. But Daniel Ricciardo in sixth place in the Red Bull is tucked right up behind the Williams of Felipe Massa in their battle over fifth position. So that's going to be the one that is brewing. You think that Williams will have to come in and pit again because they've only got 22 laps to go and they pitted after just 9 laps. So we'll wait and see what happens there, Jenny.
Yeah, interesting talking to one of the engineers earlier today. They were saying if they were in the situation, let's say, that Mercedes found themselves in, having a good lead at this race with their cars in 1 and 2, would they potentially pit and just take the safety option, because they don't really know so much about these tyres, they don't have the information they would want. So I think out of safety, the engineer was saying yes, they would pit both cars, and just to make sure that by the end of this race they're not in trouble.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, and that's certainly going to be one that runs and runs a little bit already. Hashtag Tiregate is starting to appear on Twitter, so we'll see what the fallout is from that after the race. The battle between Massa and Ricciardo for fifth position is still going on. Massa in the Williams in that fifth place, Ricciardo behind him in the Renault, in the Red Bull Renault, but that Renault engine doesn't have quite as much power as the Mercedes in a straight line, so Ricciardo, if he wants to get past Massa for fifth place, is going to have to do something a little different and a little bit unusual. Rosberg's lead now is up to 4.2 seconds, although Lewis Hamilton is currently setting the fastest first sector of the race and the fastest second sector of the race. They're in the final sequence of corners now, just coming through the stadium section, and it's a fantastic battle between the two, as we've had all year. Rosberg flashes past the commentary box now, and then you wait a couple of seconds, and there comes Lewis Hamilton. That is 3.5 seconds, and Hamilton was 0.7 of a second quicker on that last lap. He's just set the fastest lap of the race so far, so it's not all over there, and it's not all over for fifth place either, because Massa is still defending from Daniel Ricciardo. Red Bull have made big noises about their Renault engines, Mark. You're a former head of Cosworth engines. They seem to be doing all right here, but as they get onto the start-finish straight, the sound you can hear is that Renault engine of Daniel Ricciardo, and although he's got his DRS open now, which means he can slice through the air more easily, he's not closing in on Felipe Massa as much as he wants, but he lunges it down into turn 1. Up the inside goes the Australian and takes fifth position away from Felipe Massa. Doesn't have the straight line speed, but he's got the bravery.
But he's also got the grip, because his tyres are that much fresher, and really he was able to track Massa so beautifully through the last sequence of corners through the tight stadium section, and then get more energy through those tyres, through the Mansell corner onto the pit straight, and really nail that position. A great move by Daniel Ricciardo, and really an indication of just the way this race can seesaw in terms of where different people are in terms of tyre strategy and how they've been able to manage them.
Sergio Perez has just made another overtaking move into the hairpin inside the 55,000-seater baseball stadium. The crowd erupts down there. This time it's Max Verstappen that he goes past, because Verstappen made a mistake into 12, and Sergio Perez sent it up the inside. He's up now into 8th position with his teammate Nico Hülkenberg 17 seconds further up the road, but I think Hülkenberg may have to be on a 2-stop strategy. Hamilton has taken the gap down to 3 seconds now between he and Nico Rosberg. Any news on Williams, Jenny?
Yes, interestingly, I've just spoken to the team. They are going to try and make this work. They're not sure whether they can. Out the two cars, Felipe Massa is struggling the most. He came in on lap 10 to change over onto the tyres, whereas Bottas came in on lap 9, but they are trying to go for it.
And we've lost Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel has crashed into the barriers. I think that's in the same sequence of corners he went off earlier. He's pulled up his visor. He is going to climb out of the car, but Sebastian Vettel is out of the Grand Prix. A miserable day, and the safety car has been deployed. That is going to tighten everything up, and it's going to really throw a mix into this race with just 19 laps to go here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Here's Vettel's radio.
Okay, I crashed. Again, turn 7. Yeah.
Okay, are you okay?
I'm okay. Sorry.
Sebastian Vettel feeling very apologetic as he climbs out of his Scarlet Ferrari that is parked in the barriers, and he emerges unscathed, but he has gone off at the same place he spun earlier on. This time he's hit the wall. Carlos Sainz has pitted instantly and has got back out again in the Toro Rosso, so that's his second pit stop. That's his third pit stop actually that Sainz has done, so that's an unusual one. And he's switched onto these soft compound tyres, which may be quicker in the final part of the race. So fascinating stuff. Also in has come Daniel Kvyat in the Red Bull, so he's going to switch onto some soft tyres potentially. This is really going to mix things up here in the Mexican Grand Prix.
Yeah, now this is injected something novel at a point in the race when, frankly, it was all looking terribly processional. And actually, there's now a stream of cars coming down the pit lane. Not just Ricciardo, but Massa, also Nico Hülkenberg, Sergio Perez's teammate, taking this opportunity to switch on to 2 fresh tyres.
Now, we needed Felipe Massa to stop again because they were going to do a 2-stop strategy anyway, we believe. But now they have managed to take that pit stop under the safety car, so we'll wait and see where it all pans out in terms of the running order. The Williams has come out I think behind Daniel Ricciardo. Valtteri Bottas has stayed out though, so that's going to be the interesting one. Valtteri Bottas in the other Williams has stayed out on circuit. He'll be promoted to 3rd position, but will he have to come into the pits? That's going to be the question. We're on lap 53 of 71 here. It's the Mexican Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live after a busy day of sport. Here we're going to be moving on to Raising the Bar with Rob Rinder in about 40 minutes time. But until then, we've got the conclusion of a Grand Prix, and the conclusion of a Grand Prix that just got very interesting. Here's Daniel Kvyat's radio.
For info, for the moment, Bottas has stayed out. But he's completed 44 laps on that set prime.
So yeah, that's the news that we were expecting. Bottas is out, but he's been out for 44 laps on that compound tyre, and we've got 18 laps to go, so it's going to be a really tough ask if Bottas wants to get to the end of the race. With Vettel out of the race now, if Rosberg wins the race, he'll have a 29-point advantage over Vettel in their battle for 2nd place in the Drivers' World Championship. Lewis Hamilton already wrapped up the title last weekend, but that will be good news for Rosberg. In now comes Valtteri Bottas, so a little bit out of sequence compared to everyone else. Williams deciding not to stack their cars and change their tyres at the same time, so in comes Bottas. That means I think we're going to have Red Bull in 3rd and 4th, but Williams out on a reasonably fresh set of tyres. We'll see where he comes out actually as they weave their way down the pit straight. It's Rosberg, then it's the camera's just cut away unfortunately, but Bottas may, and he has actually split the 2 Red Bulls here, so the order will be Rosberg, Hamilton, Kvyat, Bottas, Ricciardo, Massa, as Sebastian Vettel went off. He didn't actually spin into turn 7 this time. The back end got away from him under braking, and he ended up going straight on into the Tech Pro barrier, and that's the end of the race for him.
Well, the 2 camera angles that we saw of that were most unusual because it looked as if there was literally no braking and no grip. I mean, he went straight on, but then the car snapped sideways and we saw the 4 tire marks tracking him into the barrier. The Tech Pro barrier behaving very well, as we have come to expect, and a safety car being tracked very closely behind, of course, by Nico Rosberg, with, I believe, one of the Toro Rossos splitting them apart, the 2 Mercedes cars.
It's Carlos Sainz, but they will release Carlos Sainz, I would have thought, to go in front of the safety car. Now we've got Rosberg versus Hamilton for the lead of the race. Under the safety car restart, that could be Hamilton's opportunity. Here's Perez's radio.
What if we pit now? Do we lose any places?
Checker, we would lose to Verstappen. We would lose to Verstappen and maybe Grosjean.
So that's Sergio Perez being told, if he pits now, you'll effectively drop out of the point-scoring positions. But the guys behind him are on soft tyres. Perez is on the medium tyres, as Perez's father Antonio watches on in the Force India pit. Some great moves today from Perez, but it's Hülkenberg who's the highest-placed Force India driver at the moment in 7th spot. So the restart for Hamilton is going to be interesting. This is his opportunity because he has tyres that are 2 laps fresher than Nico Rosberg. And while that may not sound like a lot, nevertheless it's going to be a potential for him to have an attack on the race leader. The Mexican marshals are pushing the barriers back into place where Sebastian Vettel slid off. And, well, good point from Chippy Barton here on BBC F1 using the hashtag. The question is, has Nico Rosberg got his head in the right place after last weekend's safety car? And where he lost, well, that was the virtual safety car where he lost out to where he battled with the Red Bull. But nevertheless, it's going to be interesting to see who is more fired up for this one when the safety car comes in. We should only have a couple more laps. The order is Rosberg, Hamilton, Kvyat, Bottas, Ricciardo, Massa, Hülkenberg, Perez, Verstappen and Grosjean the top 10. And then we've got Maldonado, Sainz, Ericsson, Nasser, Button, Stevens and Rossi, the 17 runners. Vettel, Raikkonen and Alonso all out of the race. 7 world championships out of the race.
Jack, it's interesting, isn't it? Before this race started, we were having a discussion about safety cars and virtual safety cars as well, and how I think it's probably a lot easier to restart a race under a safety car and get it right than it is under a virtual safety car, where there is lots of room for either error or maybe just making the most of a situation. There's not so much room for that, is there, with a real safety car?
No, that is true. The virtual safety car is a sort of movable feast on the restart, whereas the regular safety car is the Mercedes road car, but a properly souped up road car. And that will pull into the pits, and then Nico Rosberg controls the pace and decides when to go. Here's Bottas's radio.
So, as mentioned, Kvyat in front is on option tyres. I'm sure he's going to struggle at the restart with warm-up. We've got the prime, that's going to work well at the low temps.
So that's
so focus on maintaining tyre temperature, Danny. Temperatures at this stage are reasonable. Just keep working at them. Pressures are no concern.
So Bottas in 4th place for the Williams team, being told you've got the tyre advantage over Kvyat because you are on the softer compound tyres and you should be able to attack him. Kvyat in turn being told you've got to keep your tyre temperatures up, fundamentally because you've got Valtteri Bottas behind you. So Rosberg leads Hamilton. Rosberg started the race from pole position. On the run down towards turn 1 he held the lead, but Ricciardo and Vettel got together. Vettel picked up a puncture, was sent right to the back of the pack. Since then he's had 2 spins and a crash and is out of the race. That's why we're under safety car conditions. The battle for 3rd place now is between the Red Bulls and the Williamses. Kvyat holding that 3rd spot at the moment, ahead of Bottas, Ricciardo and Massa, and we're just waiting for the safety car to come in here. But it's been a very bad day for Ferrari, Jenny.
Yes, it has, and our stat man's been in touch with me, Jack. You'll like this. Ferrari previously had a car classified as a finisher in every race since the 2006 Australian Grand Prix, and that's the longest run of all time. Thank you very much to Sean for that information.
Wow, that is excellent. Thank you for that, Jenny. Jenny Gow, our BBC Radio 5 Live pit lane reporter, is down in the pits, as you'd expect. Mark Gallagher is alongside myself, Jack Nicholls, in the commentary box as we wait for the safety car restart to come.
And with the 2 manners of Stevens and Rossi having been released by the safety car, that means that all of the back markers have now gone out of the way. Nico Rosberg tucked in behind the Mercedes-Benz safety car. Then there's now Lewis Hamilton. He's staying very close behind. Danny Kvyat was right on Lewis Hamilton's gearbox when he last came past us, and if we know anything about Lewis Hamilton, Jack, he's going to be thinking, how can I make sure that when the safety car goes in and Nico Rosberg manages this restart, how can I be right behind him? Because I think this is Lewis's opportunity to take this race away from his teammate.
Certainly is. The safety car will stay out for another lap. It comes across the start-finish line with the snake of cars following it, but it's the 2 silver Mercedes that are at the head of the pack on the run down towards the first corner. We're on lap 57 out of 71. Rosberg and Hamilton, the top 2. Later on in the week, we've got plenty more football to come on 5 Live Sport. Tomorrow night, it's Tottenham versus Aston Villa in the Premier League. Then a big night for all 4 of our Champions League clubs. Manchester United against CSKA Moscow is the main commentary on Tuesday night, with updates from Sevilla against Manchester City. And then Wednesday, focus is on Bayern Munich versus Arsenal.
And use those 10 car links. Use those 10 car links so you can keep the car cool and get more brake heating.
So Nicholas Rosberg being told to use the 10 car lengths. You're allowed to be 10 car lengths behind the safety car, so they're asking him to drop back, speed up, brake, just to try and get some temperature into the brakes, which is ironic considering the overheating problems they've had all weekend.
So this is all about temperature management in terms of brakes, in terms of tyres, and actually just on the cue there, Nico Rosberg has done exactly what he's been told as we listen to Jenson Button.
He's got a brake fire. He's got a brake fire.
It's so difficult to pick up what Jenson Button says.
He actually seems to always have a crackly radio, so didn't quite pick up on that.
So the safety car is coming in this lap, and we will get racing back underway. Lap 57 of 71 here in the Mexican Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. Lewis Hamilton wrapped up the championship last weekend as he went past Nico Rosberg to win the Grand Prix. He's done that for all of the last 3 races, and he will be trying to do that again now. They're coming into the baseball stadium. Nico Rosberg is really backing up the rest of the pack before deciding to stamp on the throttle and get the racing underway. Lewis Hamilton is tucked right up behind his Mercedes teammate as they come through the final corner. In comes the safety car. We resume racing in Mexico City as they come through the final turn. They flash past in front of the commentary box. Lewis Hamilton will try and get the slipstream from his teammate Nico Rosberg, who leads the race. Bottas is going to challenge Kvyat as well on the run down towards turn 1. Bottas pulls the inside line and is up into 3rd position. The Williams is up into 3rd place. Rosberg holds the lead though as they come down into turn 1. Bottas looks like he might have gone in a little bit too deep. Big lock up further back, but Bottas holds onto the position. But it's Nico Rosberg who holds the lead of the Grand Prix. Lap 58 of 71, and Lewis Hamilton wasn't able to take advantage of that and is maybe half a second or so behind his teammate in the lead of the Grand Prix.
Now Lewis Hamilton will be trying to maintain the gap to Nico Rosberg because he wasn't able to make the pass into the first corner, so it's all going to be about waiting until the DRS is reactivated to give him any chance of actually taking this race victory away from Nico.
Absolutely. So we've had the change for 3rd position. Valtteri Bottas into 3rd spot. Daniel Kvyat down to 4th. Ricciardo is in 5th place and looking pretty racy to try and get past his teammate as well. So we'll keep an eye out on that one progresses. But at the moment, Williams are 3rd, and they won the last 2 Grand Prix here in Mexico City with Nigel Mansell in 1992 and with Riccardo Patrese in 1991. But it's Rosberg leading from Hamilton, Kvyat in 3rd. No other position changes. Carlos Sainz it was who went in deep into turn 1, and as a result he's dropped down to 12th position. Mexican Sergio Perez is in 8th spot. Across the line they come, and already Rosberg has got a 1.5 second advantage, and off has gone Felipe Nasr in the stadium complex. I think he'll be able to get going again. He's lost the car at turn 13, and the blue and yellow Sauber should be able to recover from the race. No, he's parking it. He's pulling off the track now and in a safe position.
My brakes are finished.
Well, that was succinct. My brakes are finished, says Felipe Nasr. And Nico Rosberg, 1.5 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton takes a tenth and a bit out of him as Nico Rosberg leaves the track.
Yeah, he makes a mistake coming through the S's sequence. I don't think Hamilton was close enough to close in on him, and in fact Hamilton went wide himself coming through turn 12. So the 2 Mercedes guys both absolutely pushing as hard as they can, and we'll see what the that's why the gap was 1.5 seconds as they ended that first lap, because Hamilton lost so much time in the final sector. Lap 59 of 71, only 12 laps or so to go, and at the moment Kvyat's in 3rd. Ricciardo's not close enough to challenge him. Let's hear from Felipe Massa's team radio.
So Felipe, both these Red Bulls are vulnerable.
Attack, attack, attack is essentially the message to Felipe Massa there. Both the Red Bulls are vulnerable, and that's mainly, I imagine, because of the straight line speed advantage that the Williams has over the Red Bull as they come down the start finish straight now. Massa in 6th place will try and close in. He's not close enough to get the DRS just yet, but he really does close in on those Red Bulls down the long start finish straight, 1.3 kilometers long.
The Red Bulls in a Williams sandwich, and you have to wonder, is Bottas going to box them in a little bit as we also now turn our attention back to the leaders. Rosberg 1.3 seconds ahead of Hamilton, and it would be great if we can see on our monitors here, for the benefit of you listeners, a replay of those Mercedes incidents, because I want to make sure that we called those exactly right, because it certainly looked like both of them actually had an off-track moment.
Here's Jenson Button's radio.
So Jenson Perez is in P8. He's on 41 lap old primes and holding everyone up. There could yet be action here.
Okay, so Button at the moment is down in 14th position, but they think everyone's going to start to get stacked up behind Sergio Perez in 8th place. Pete's got in touch using the hashtag BBCAF1, and he's able to decode Jenson Button a little better than we were, and his complaint was about the brake bias is what he was struggling with earlier on when we couldn't quite figure out what he'd said over his Crackly team radio. So thank you very much, Pete, for that. And that brake bias will harm him if he's trying to get in the fight with the cars in front. The sound you can hear is that of Daniel Ricciardo running in 5th position in the Red Bull. Rosberg leads Hamilton though at the front by 1.3 seconds. A Mercedes 1-2 at the moment, but we've just had a safety car period after a crash from Sebastian Vettel, and that's why the whole field are bunched up again.
Now, I would expect in the next 3 to 5 laps for Lewis Hamilton to really put the hammer down. Maybe we will see a period of hammer time because he's only 1.3 seconds behind. And as I said, he's gone quickest of the whole race in Sector 1 at 28.1, a full 1/10 of a second up on Rosberg. Hamilton knows this is his window of opportunity if he can just break to within a second of his teammate.
Yep, absolutely. So 1.3 seconds is the gap at the moment. Well, it's come down to 1.2, hasn't it? Because he took a 1/10 of a second out in that first sector. Lap 61 of 71 now. So we're in the closing stages of the Mexican Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. It's just gone 8:30 back in the UK. And coming up in half an hour, we're going to be having Raising the Bar with Rob Rinder, followed by Stephen Nolan at 10. But for now, we're at the conclusion of the Mexican Grand Prix. The gap remains 1.3 seconds because Rosberg takes a 1/10 of a second back in the middle sector. So that continuing fight between the two Mercedes doesn't show any signs of stopping, and it's 1.1 seconds between them as they cross the line. So Hamilton just a couple of tenths away from getting in that DRS zone.
And this is absolutely tooth and nail. Nico Rosberg really needs to respond because Lewis Hamilton, if he was to repeat that lap on this lap, he'd be 0.9 of a seconds behind his teammate, and suddenly we're into some serious DRS action.
Absolutely. This is, well, 7 days ago, Nico Rosberg was in a very similar position and made a mistake that cost him not only the win of the race, but also the World Championship title. Will we see anything similar from Rosberg, or will he be able to keep his head and keep the car on the road? Through the right-hander, and it's at turn 6 and 7. The sound you can hear is Daniel Ricciardo as he comes out now through the quick S's sequence of corners. He is only 0.6 of a second behind his teammate Daniel Kvyat, and I wonder if Red Bull might allow Ricciardo through to have a bit of a go at getting past Valtteri Bottas. We'll wait and see how that transpires. Jenson Button running in 14th place, Will Stevens running in 15th place. So not a good day for the other Britons as Lewis Hamilton is in 2nd place. He's just about to come out of the final corner, and in front of our commentary box, there goes Rosberg and there goes Hamilton. That's how much closer they are than before the safety car was deployed. And interesting that Felipe Nasr's brake failure may show us that the teams are really struggling with the brakes. We expected them to, but Nasr is the first person to really suffer and retire from the race.
And Lewis Hamilton looking very racy. He just pulled out of the slipstream of Nico Rosberg on the run down to turn 1 just to show Nico, I'm here, I'm ready to pounce on you, putting a little message through to his teammate. This race is far from over with 8 laps remaining.
And we're set for another grandstand finish, Jenny.
Yeah, we certainly are, and what a finish it will be because the podium is in that baseball section. Nigel Mansell will be doing the interviews. He's down there now, and I think he's quite keen for Williams to get 3rd place and be up there alongside the Mercedes.
Thank you very much for that, Jen. So a number of you getting in touch using hashtag BBCF1 and saying that it was Jenson Button saying that Nasr's brakes were on fire. So that's what the radio message was, and then subsequently we saw Felipe Nasr retire from the race. So that all makes a bit more sense. Thank you very much for getting in touch. There, we're on lap 63 of 71. There's a close battle between Pastor Maldonado and Romain Grosjean, the two Lotus drivers. They're battling over the final point-scoring position. And this has been a good race for Maldonado. He's only out-qualified Grosjean once in this whole season. Oh, just as I say that, he goes in deep and he almost hits the wall. Just manages to keep it out at turn 12 and rejoins the circuit. Just as I'm about to give him a bit of praise, he almost crashes again. But Maldonado stays on the circuit. He had been in front of Grosjean for most of this race, and he's closing in on his teammate, but he's lost the momentum now.
Jack, I didn't realise you had the power of the commentator's curse, and that's actually worth knowing for future reference. And Pastor Maldonado, you know, he's had a pretty torrid season. He's only had 5 points finishes in his Lotus, and that little off-track excursion just showing again how on the edge everyone else. Lewis Hamilton exactly 1 second behind Nico Rosberg now.
Okay, Felipe, 8 more laps to go, 8 more laps to go. Let's keep creeping up on these Red Bulls.
Felipe Massa on that last lap was 0.2 of a second quicker than Daniel Ricciardo, and as soon as Massa can get into that DRS zone behind the Red Bulls, then I think he's got a real chance of trying to overtake them because of the straight line speed advantage. In qualifying, the Williamses were absolutely flying down the start-finish straight. Felipe Massa was the quickest of anyone, 364 kilometres an hour, whereas for the Red Bulls, their quickest start-finish straight speed was 347 kilometres an hour. So they've got a 20 kilometre an hour advantage down the straights. So that is going to be the opportunity for Williams if they're able to get close enough. 8 laps to go, lap 64 of 71, and 1.7 seconds now is the gap between Rosberg and Hamilton.
And a big mistake for Lewis Hamilton in the mid-sector. He lost a full second to teammate Nico Rosberg, obviously pushing a little bit too hard to get into with DRS range for the start of this lap, and that may be the pivotal mistake in this race.
Absolutely, because he's 1.7 seconds back now, lost a second in the middle sector, so he would have been in that DRS zone were it not for Hamilton's slight error. So Rosberg continues to lead the Grand Prix, as he has done from the start. Hamilton 1.7 seconds further back, and the battle now is all going to be over 4th, 5th and 6th places, I think, with Kvyat, Ricciardo and Massa all running line astern. The Williams is battling it out with the Red Bulls. At the moment it's Williams, Red Bull, Williams from 3rd down to 6th positions. Then it's the 2 Force Indias, Nico Hülkenberg 7th, Sergio Perez in 8th place, Max Verstappen in 9th, Romain Grosjean completing the top 10 for Lotus. Then it's Maldonado, Ericsson, Sainz, Button, Rossi, Stevens and Nasser are 17. Oh no, Nasser's retired, hasn't he? So we've got 16 runners, and interestingly Alexander Rossi has got past Will Stevens since the safety car restart. Stevens was in front when the safety car was deployed, but now Alex Rossi, somewhere out on the circuit, has managed to get past his British teammate, so Stevens is running down in last place for the Manor team. But Hamilton is on a mission. The gap's come down to 1.4 seconds. Took 0.3 out of Rosberg on that last lap as he tries to haul him back in after that error.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton never says die. He's absolutely going for this race victory if he can still bring it to himself. He's got 5 laps left. It seems like a tall order, but Lewis Hamilton has the habit of working miracles, and he knows all about putting pressure. He takes another 1.12 of a second out of Nico Rosberg on the first sector alone on this lap. So Lewis Hamilton aiming to regain ground after that error, which we still haven't actually seen on the monitors, but we'll bring you some detail of that when we have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lap 66 of 71 in the Mexican Grand Prix on 5 Live.
Okay, Dale, so I know that's difficult. We need to try and keep up cover out. If you can, it'll help our DRS. We need to try and get DRS.
Okay, so they need Daniel Ricciardo to get close enough to Kvyat so that Ricciardo can use the DRS, which will in turn keep Felipe Massa in the Williams a little bit further back. As soon as Ricciardo falls out of that DRS zone, then he's going to be even more susceptible to Felipe Massa down the start-finish straight. 5 laps to go here in Mexico.
1.2 seconds separates 3-times world champion Lewis Hamilton from teammate Nico Rosberg, who's leading this Mexican Grand Prix and has done so in emphatic style. We are set for a grandstand finish here.
Hamilton has just set the fastest lap of the race, and it's down to 1.2 seconds, so another lap like that and he will be in the DRS zone. This is going to be an absolutely fantastic end to this first Mexican Grand Prix in 23 years. We had a British winner 23 years ago when Nigel Mansell took victory on his way to securing the 1992 World Championship title. Will we have another one here? Hamilton is certainly pushing, and Rosberg has had to respond with his personal best first sector of the race so far, but Hamilton was still slightly quicker. Bottas in 3rd, Kvyat 4th, Ricciardo 5th, and Massa has dropped back from Ricciardo, so Felipe Massa I don't think is going to have the pace to close in really on Daniel Ricciardo. Doesn't look like it.
No, it certainly doesn't. And Nico Rosberg responds. Quickest overall mid-sector time on this lap, 31.5 seconds, 2/10 quicker than Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton said last weekend that he saw the back of Nico Rosberg's car for the last 10 laps and knew that that's all that separated him from victory. And once again, that is the position.
Valtteri Bottas is looking set for his second podium of the season. He finished third in Canada all those months ago. Here's Massa's radio.
So Ricciardo's starting to struggle with his rear tyres. It's really close up on him.
So Felipe Massa in the Williams being told to close up on Daniel Ricciardo in 5th place. Easier said than done, but he does manage to take 0.2 of a second out of Ricciardo as they flash down the start-finish straight up to 225 miles an hour before stamping on the brakes and getting the car stopped to just 110 kilometers an hour for the right-hander turn 1. Rosberg set the fastest lap of the race on that previous tour, and the gap goes up to 1.4 seconds again. So this is a real ding-dong battle between the two Mercedes up at the front. And okay, we haven't had wheel-to-wheel action, but for me anyway, part of the joy of Formula One and motorsport is seeing people on the limit lap after lap. One tiny mistake is all it takes, as we saw 7 days ago in Austin when Rosberg threw the title away.
And you know, Nico Rosberg has come in for a lot of criticism. Actually, he's just done a very slow mid-sector, 0.4 of a second slower than his previous lap, and Lewis Hamilton has taken another 10th out of him, and I expect Lewis Hamilton to finish this last sector somewhere around 1.2, 1.1 seconds behind Nico Rosberg, as long as Lewis doesn't lose any time through this final sector and through the long Mansell corner.
Who's your money on, Jen?
I don't know. I don't want to guess. I don't want to even bet on it. But I can tell you that there's a lot of tension at the pit wall at the moment for Mercedes. Paddy Lowe, the technical director, leaning forward, leaning back, leaning forward again. This is tough for them.
We're on lap 69 of 71. Jenny Gow down in the pits. Mark Gallagher, former head of Cosworth Engines and part of the Jordan and Red Bull Formula One teams, alongside myself, Jack Nicholls, in the commentary box for BBC Radio 5 Live. We have only got a couple of laps to go. We're on lap 69 of 71. And Hamilton has taken a 10th of a second out of Rosberg in the first sector, so it's down to 1.1 seconds. Meanwhile, the two Lotuses are still battling. Maldonado, despite making a mistake earlier on, has caught up to the back of his teammate Grosjean. So this is a really impressive drive, actually, from Pastor Maldonado, who will be racing in that team alongside British driver Jolyon Palmer for next season. But they're battling over 10th place. It's the battle for the lead that is the one to keep an eye on.
And just a quick word about local hero Sergio Perez, down in 8th position. He's the only driver to have made one pit stop in this race. He's 2.2 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen and has done an extraordinary job to manage those medium compound tyres for what effectively will be a 50-lap plus run for the rest of this Grand Prix. Nico Rosberg does a stunning final sector, and Lewis Hamilton has a poor final sector. 1.6 seconds separates them.
And we're on to the penultimate lap of the race now, so unless Hamilton can find 0.6 of a second on this lap alone, he won't be close enough to use the DRS and try and attack Nico Rosberg. 2 to go here in Mexico. Formula One's return to Central America, and it has given us a fascinating race. Hasn't been the barnstormer, chaotic melee that we had last weekend in Austin, but it's been a fascinating race, and it's been wonderful to see Rosberg versus Hamilton. The safety car has added a bit of spice for the final 15 or 20 laps, and in the first sector Hamilton is unable to match Nico Rosberg. Massa isn't close enough to Ricciardo, so with a lap and a half to go, Rosberg and Hamilton in the top two. Bottas in the Williams is third. Kvyat is fourth, with his teammate at Red Bull, Daniel Ricciardo, in fifth. Felipe Massa in the other Williams, sixth. Nico Hülkenberg in seventh. Perez, Verstappen and Grosjean the top 10. Maldonado, Ericsson, Sainz, Button, Rossi and Stevens, our 16 runners. We've lost Felipe Nasr, both Ferraris, Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen, and the McLaren of Fernando Alonso, as Nico Rosberg comes through the stadium complex now. He's about to turn for the final time in front of our commentary box window and come across the start-finish line. The man with the checkered flag is being readied, because in 2.6 miles, Nico Rosberg surely will win the Mexican Grand Prix, but Hamilton will push right to the end.
and this will be a great boost to Nico Rosberg's confidence, his prestige, his standing, I think, in the eyes of so many people, because he has really commanded this race, taken a very measured approach to it. He's absorbed a huge amount of pressure from Lewis Hamilton, particularly after that safety car period, and has driven really an inch perfect race. And you know, for his critics who say he can't beat Lewis Hamilton in a straight fight, well, today's been a pretty straight fight, and Nico Rosberg's done a terrific job, and that fourth consecutive pole position really played a key part in helping him on the way to what looks like a terrific victory here at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez.
He comes through the S's now, does Nico Rosberg. His last race victory was the 21st of June back in Austria. Since then, Lewis Hamilton has gone on to dominate and win the world title, but it looks as though maybe we're seeing Nico Rosberg get back just a little bit, and this will be absolutely vital in their fight for next year's World Championship. As he comes through the left-hander, the crowd begin to cheer. Nico Rosberg exits through the final corner, named after Nigel Mansell, who won here 23 years ago. It's been a superb drive from Rosberg. He wins for the first time since the Austrian Grand Prix in June. Lewis Hamilton finishes second. He's already wrapped up the championship, but Rosberg has stamped his authority on this race and has proven to Hamilton that he can match him. Third place across the line is going to be Valtteri Bottas in the Williams, his second podium of the season so far after finishing third in Canada. He clenches his fist and pumps it with delight. It's fourth place across the line for Daniel Kvyat, but the Mexican fans here at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez giving a huge cheer to their man Sergio Perez, who's coming out of the final corner now, flashes in front of the commentary box window to finish in 8th position. Not the fairy tale result he would have wanted, but he will be satisfied nevertheless with a job well done. The only man in the field to make one pit stop. But it's Rosberg who takes the win. Hamilton, Bottas, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Massa, Hülkenberg, Perez, Verstappen, Grosjean, the top 10. Rosberg back on form.
Yeah! Excellent job, Nico. Excellent job.
Absolute delight for Nico Rosberg. And I wonder if Lewis Hamilton will throw a cap at him later on today. It might be a sombrero, so that could probably do more damage.
Well, it's very interesting, because if there is one result of this victory which will kind of damage the record books for Lewis Hamilton, is this victory for Nico Rosberg prevents Lewis Hamilton from matching the record 13 Grand Prix in a single season. And a terrific result for Nico Rosberg today. You really have to hand it to him after the pressure of last week, after the, I have to say, rather petulant response that he had to the events in Austin, Texas. He's come back here, looked extremely strong all weekend, stuck the car in pole position, and then commanded this race really from start to finish, in spite of the best efforts of Lewis Hamilton to gain ground. And a terrific result for him. Just Valtteri Bottas, Williams, they had a terrible weekend in Austin. It's great to see Williams on the podium here. They will be delighted after what was a very disappointing outing in the United States just a week ago.
The team are already running their way towards the podium, and it's going to be a very unique setting here, because instead of coming back around to the pits, the cars, the top 3, are all going to stop in the middle of the baseball stadium, where 55,000 fans that have seen the likes of Madonna and the Rolling Stones perform there are going to see the 3 drivers climbing out of their car, and they're going to be enjoying these celebrations. Jenny Gow is down there.
Yes, I am. I'm in a sea of engineers, mechanics, people who are physios to the teams, you name it. They're all here as they make their way in a big crowd to this very unique setting. So they've come to this infield at the stadium section where they play baseball most weekends, but this weekend it's something different, because the 2 Mercedes and the Williams are parked up. Nico Rosberg takes his helmet off. He's wearing his black balaclava as Lewis Hamilton also climbs out of the car in front of 55,000 people. Rosberg stands onto the front of his car on the number 6. He raises his arms aloft. He puts a hand through their hair, conducts this crowd who are all cheering with delight for Nico Rosberg. He wants to hear more applause. Will he get it? That's the question, Jack. This is fantastic.
It's a wonderful scene, isn't it, as Rosberg stands on top of the front of his car, waving to the crowd here in the Autodromo. And listen to this. Nico is the cheers from the Mexican crowd. They've seen the German driver perform an absolutely faultless race, which is something that you can't necessarily say for Rosberg's season. Hamilton has won it and been a more than worthy champion, but Rosberg's mistakes have played into Hamilton's hands.
Well, Rosberg has performed superbly today under what must have been a lot of pressure. He must have had a lot going through his mind in recent days as to the way his career has taken a turn, his teammate to Lewis Hamilton, but real jubilation on his face, and also the face of his team personnel who've come round to greet him. And I have to say, it's at a moment like this that I reflect on the fact that it's a real shame that, for example, Checo Perez can't join those three on the podium, if nothing else but to pay respects to the crowd here in Mexico, because he is their local hero, and it would be great for him to be able to say thank you to them. But of course there's regulations why that can't happen, but it's a real shame because this audience today, these spectators, have been outstanding.
I can't wait to come here next year. The drivers now are making their way towards the podium, Jenny, walking in front of all the Paddock Club and this huge stadium. It's quite an atmosphere.
Jack, this is the most surreal experience, I think, of my entire life. I'm now on the racetrack, right in the middle, so I can see the Armadillo building to my right. Everybody has stood up here and clapping, cheering. There are thousands and thousands of fans, and I'm right where the cars were just a few moments ago, as literally so many people pour onto this track. And I just want to try and catch up with Paddy Lowe, who's on his way here. Paddy, technically that was a masterpiece for you. How happy are you?
Absolutely fantastic. I'm very very happy for Nico. Great drive.
Yeah, it's about time he managed to get that win. It's all the way back since Austria, and there were moments there when maybe Lewis was going to challenge him, but he didn't. And as you say, rightly so, Nico very happy right now.
No, it's a great competition, but you know, Nico was the stronger. Great qualifying lap, had the front row, controlled the corners where he was at risk from Lewis behind. Fantastic drive.
And what about this for setting the podium right in front of us and thousands of fans? We're in the middle of what's normally a baseball field.
Yeah, it's really quite emotional actually. This is the best crowd we get, to be honest. Fantastic. And great, we gave them a good show.
I need to ask you one question about tyres. What was the decision to bring them in? I know Lewis Hamilton questioned it. He didn't want to come in.
Essentially, the first set were worn down to zero. Parts of the tyre on one of the tyres, so that was more than our original estimate for that set, so there was a risk of getting through to the canvas on the final set, and because we had the gap for another stop, it was absolutely the right thing to do.
How good is this podium going to feel? Last time it was you up there getting sprayed with champagne and spraying the champagne because Rosberg gave him your champagne bottle. How good is this going to feel today?
It's fantastic. So we have our chief race engineer up there, Andrew Shovelin, who we call Shove, and it's actually his birthday today.
Ah, happy birthday, Andy. That's good news. I'll let you go and celebrate. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
So Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg about to make their way out onto the podium here. The Williams team have all gathered down below, as have the Mercedes team, and the fans in the baseball stadium have to remain in their seats, but the fans in the main grandstands are going to be able to go around onto the circuit and support their fans, support their drivers. In third place out onto the podium goes Valtteri Bottas, his second podium of the season so far after finishing third in Canada. In second position, it's Lewis Hamilton, the world champion, but it's only second place here. They've got massive Pirelli sombreros atop their head as Bottas, the blonde-haired Finnish driver, climbs out in his all-white Williams overall. But here comes Rosberg onto the top step of the podium. And he's about to head out onto the top step of the podium. And what a reception. Rosberg climbs onto the top step of the podium, and for he and Mercedes, the German national anthem. Nico Rosberg on the top step of the podium here in Mexico as Formula One racing returns. It is only his 4th win of the season so far, and he receives his trophy and holds it aloft. And the team absolutely delighted, the crowd absolutely delighted with what they've seen. It wasn't the most thrilling race in the history of Formula One ever, but it had the intrigue, it had the battling up at the front. It's the 2nd place trophy for Lewis Hamilton. Mark Gallagher, he looks a little forlorn. What do you think is going on in his head? Is it frustration that he wasn't allowed to pit, or is it frustration that he didn't have the pace of Rosberg?
Well, actually, I was going to say he looked quite relaxed because he had a good chat with Bottas in the pre-podium room where they had obviously a little bit of a discussion. I suspect Lewis will be disappointed because he would have liked to have won a game this weekend. He wants to maintain his superiority within the team, but a good result for him, great result for the team, and I'm quite sure that this doesn't detract in any way from how Lewis Hamilton feels about life at the moment as 3 times world champion. The fact it'll just redouble his efforts to come back for the final 2 races and nail Nico Rosberg performance.
So the champagne sprayed on the podium, and a fantastic podium for Williams on the weekend. They celebrate their partnership with James Bond, Jenny.
Yes, Naomi Harris is here. We're just watching all the ticker tape come out in red, white and green.
Amazing. This is my first time ever, and it's incredible. I don't know what I've been missing. I should have been here every year.
Obviously, you're here because the Bond movie premieres tomorrow and you play Miss Moneypenny.
I am, and I'm also here because the Williams team actually made the Jaguar CX-75, which is obviously featured hugely in the racing sequence in Spectre.
Yeah, and I know that's filmed here in Mexico City. It's going to be amazing. But getting on the podium for Valtteri Bottas, you must be their good luck charm. They'll be asking you to come back all the time.
That's actually what some of the team have said to me, so I love it. I want to come back. So anytime they ask me, I'm here.
And isn't this amazing? 55,000 people. The track's being invaded now by fans from the main grandstand. Anything ever experienced like this?
The atmosphere is absolutely extraordinary, and everybody is just so happy, so energized. I can't even describe it. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced.
Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Let's hear from our winners now with 1992 world champion and his fantastic Spanish, Nigel Mansell.
What a brilliant race we've had. Can we get the drivers to come down here and get closer to you? We'll talk to Nico. What a flawless drive, Nico. My goodness me, you were probably wondering what you had to do when the safety car came out. How does it feel? How does it feel?
¿Qué tal hoy, México? Yeah, amazing day, great race, great battle with Lewis, who drove really well, and just really happy to get the win. And this is really the best podium of the year, so what a place to do it.
That's absolutely incredible. May I congratulate you. I mean, I couldn't wish for a winner. The 3 on the podium here, absolutely incredible. And what do you think of the crowd? It's unbelievable, isn't it, Nico? What do you think of the crowd here? Fantastic crowd.
Oh, absolutely awesome. Muchas gracias.
Okay, across to Lewis now, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, Lewis, you pushed really hard, and when the safety car came out, you had younger tyres. The crew did a brilliant job with the pit stops. You know, you were pushing hard, but couldn't quite do it today.
No, Nico drove a fantastic race, and it's just been fantastic to be here in Mexico. I've never seen a crowd like this. It's like a football game. So it's really.
Viva Mexico!
Viva! No, but the fans have been amazing. I've never seen anything like this.
Well, you're a great champion, and I'll tell you, Nico, I mean, you're just beating Lewis absolutely fantastically. Let's go across to Valtteri here. So well-deserved podium today, ladies and gentlemen. So well-deserved. I mean, an exciting race. You had a little altercation with the Ferrari there. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I have to say a big thanks to the team. We did a mega job today. We were racing like a race-winning team, so I'm really proud of that. And yeah, obviously it was not that easy race, bit of a contact with Kimi. You know, it didn't have to end like that, so it's a bit shame for me. There was nowhere to go, but this is racing.
But great for you today, great podium, congratulations. The last word with our winner, Nico Rosberg, the last words with you.
Muchas gracias por el apoyo. Gracias.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 weeks' time, We have São Paulo in Brazil, and I can tell you, with these 3 gladiators behind, it's going to be a fantastic race. Thank you, and viva Mexico!